Welcome back, brothers and heretics, to Warhammer. Tonight's story, we have an insane clash between Tyberos, our Red Wake, and the Phoenician. Before we get to the madness, be sure to like and comment any videos and topics you want to see in the future. Be sure to subscribe for the Emperor. I want to thank you guys for the support. You have been killing it like always. Now, let's get into the video.
Carceris had no dawn. Its sun was a distant, anemic ember, too weak to pierce the industrial pall that girdled the world. Day was measured by labor sirens, execution bells, and the changing color of the furnace glow beneath the clouds. Night was merely the interval during which the manufactoria consumed fewer men. The prison continents were black iron scars laid across a globe of ash. Hive penitentiaries descended farther beneath the mountains than their towers rose above them, tier upon tier of cells, punishment vaults, foundries, barracks, and ossuary chambers. The lowest oubliettes had not seen natural light since before living memory. Men were born in them, sentenced in them, and fed into incinerators without ever witnessing an open sky. More than 13 billion souls inhabited Carceris. Condemned murderers labored beside the descendants of dead traitors. Bonded foundrymen inherited sentences issued to ancestors whose names had been erased from administratum record. Servitors walked production lines on piston limbs, their faces peeled away to accommodate targeting lenses, rivet guns, and plasma-cutting arrays. Guardsmen watched prisoners. Overseers watched guardsmen. Commissarial provosts watched everyone. Above them all, carved into every arch and blast door, stood the same injunction. Punishment is service. The words had become slick with soot and human grease. Every hour, orbital manufactoria consumed mountains of ore and excreted void ship plating, macro cannon shells, reactor baffles, and armor-grade ceramite. Chain-blade teeth spilled from stamping presses by the million. Promethium distillates moved through arterial pipe networks broad enough to swallow armored columns. Prisoners loaded shells taller than men beneath the gaze of turret-mounted heavy stubbers. The labor never silenced the chains. They scraped across factory decking. They whispered through barrack tunnels. They rattled against restraint rails in troop transports. Even the dead wore them. Iron links fused to charred wrists as corpse carts carried them towards rendering furnaces. When rebellion came, it began with a snapped chain. In Punitive District Gallows 9, a prisoner tore the restraint cable from his work gang and drove the broken iron through an overseer's mouth. The sharpened link passed through the back of the man's skull in a spray of teeth, tongue, and grey matter. Before the corpse struck the decking, 800 prisoners were moving. Within minutes, the stamping halls had become abattoirs. Men fed guards into chain-tooth presses. Servitors were dragged from their stations and dismembered for weapon parts. A provost captain was nailed to a furnace door with rivets driven through his eye sockets, wrists, and knees. The rebels opened the punishment stores, seized mining lasers and cutting torches, and tore explosive collars from the necks of those who died attempting the same. By the end of the first labor cycle, the uprising had spread across 300 kilometers of manufacturum trenches. The black chain cohorts were released before the second. They came in silence behind slab shields, fashioned from layered plasteel and the doors of execution cells. Lascarbines protruded through firing ports. Every shield bore a chain painted in dried blood. Every soldier wore a black collar locked around the spine. They were prisoners granted weapons because their crimes had proved more useful than their obedience. The first rank entered the furnace galleries beneath a rain of bolts, shrapnel, and severed body parts. Rebel mining lasers burned fist-wide holes through the shields. Men behind them cooked inside their armor, fat boiling beneath flak plate, but the formation did not halt. Those who fell were trampled until their ribcages collapsed and their corpses became firmer footing. "Advance by files," ordered Marshal Convict Dren Varro over the command channel. "Third rank, fire through the dead." Lasfire stabbed between the shields. Prisoners burst apart against the machinery. One man lost both arms at the shoulder and continued charging, blood pumping in twin fountains until a lasbolt entered his open mouth and blew his skull across the face of the rebel behind him. Another was struck through the abdomen and folded around the wound, spilling loops of intestine onto the floor. The cohorts marched over him while he tried to gather the glistening coils back into his body. Demolition teams crawled. Beneath the rebels' barricades, with melter charges chained to their harnesses, they had no intention of returning. The first detonation transformed 300 men and a fortified conveyor junction into a sphere of white heat. Flesh flashed to vapor. Bone became incandescent dust. The blast punched through 6 levels of decking and dropped an entire rebel flank into the smelting pits below. The uprising broke. Men ran. Red warning runes illuminated along the collars of the cohorts. Some of Varro's soldiers fled with the prisoners. Their heads vanished. The explosive charges implanted around their vertebrae detonated almost simultaneously, shearing skulls from shoulders and spraying the retreating ranks with brains, spinal fluid, and splinters of jawbone. Bodies took several more strides before collapsing. One head struck a wall hard enough to leave teeth embedded in the iron. The survivors stopped running. "Reform," Varro said. The Black Chains reformed. They did not fight because they loved the Emperor. They had no hymns upon their lips, no saints painted across their shields, and no expectation that death would cleanse them. They fought because obedience postponed execution. They fought because rage was more useful when disciplined. They fought because each day survived was another day stolen from the jailers who had promised to kill them. Above Carceris, something moved in the dark. The system's auger stations detected the first vessel as a cold mass drifting beyond the outer defense monitors. Its drives were silent. Its hull returned almost no active signal. The servitor clades classified it as a derelict, then revised the assessment when a second mass appeared behind it, then a third, then 12 more. The fleet emerged without translation flare, astropathic herald, or declaration of intent. Ancient warships glided from the black reaches near the outer dark, with the patience of predators rising from a lightless sea. Their gun decks remained shuttered. Their launch bays were dark. No identification codes crossed the void. The orbital authorities of Carceris watched the vessels advance and mistook silence for infirmity. Then the largest ship crossed the face of the distant sun. The light vanished behind a hull shaped by millennia of war. Armor plates overlapped like the hide of some abyssal beast. Cathedral towers rose from its spine, stripped of ornament and blackened by old bombardments. Vast jaws had been painted across its armored prow, their teeth worn pale by centuries of micrometeor abrasion. The vessel's name appeared on the defense cogitators only after it had crossed the outer mine perimeter. Nicor. Behind it came the battle barge Annihilation, forge vessels heavy with scarred manufactorum decks, strike cruisers, and lean escorts whose silhouettes resembled blades. The planetary vox channels filled with prayers, demands, and contradictory orders. The Carcharodons answered none of them. Tyberos stood at the heart of the Nicor. The strategium had been built for warriors larger than mortal men, yet he dwarfed even its armored command stations. Ancient Terminator plate enclosed him in layered slabs of ash-dark ceramite. The armor's age lay beneath every repair, beneath every replacement cable and riveted patch. Its surface had been scraped by alien claws, bolter fire, and the pressure of wars whose records had long since vanished. Hunger and Slake rested at his sides. The relic gauntlets were dormant, their hooked blades locked over chain-toothed maws. Even at rest, they resembled instruments designed less for killing than for disassembling living things. Around Tyberos stood the commanders of the nomad predation fleet. Red Brethren Terminators waited behind him, motionless beneath the dim lumen glow. Their armor was bone grey, their helms expressionless. Mortal bridge officers worked at recessed stations below, careful not to raise their voices. A hololithic image of Carceris rotated above the command dais. Population concentrations burned red. Manufactoria appeared in amber.
Deep geological anomalies pulsed beneath the southern prison continents like buried wounds. Tyberos regarded the world for a long time. When he spoke, the words were little more than the movement of stone against stone. The red tithe will be taken. A robed serf entered the command into the fleet noosphere. The strongest of aspirant age will be assessed. Tyberos
continued. Suitable adults will be divided between the ship clans, the armories, and the auxiliary holds. The weak will remain. No one asked what remaining would mean. Tyberos raised one clawed gauntlet towards the industrial markers. The foundries will be rendered. Void plate, macro munitions, reactor stock, promethium, machine tools, anything the forged ships can consume. The world turned slowly before him. His claw moved towards the anomaly beneath the mantle. The buried mechanism will be secured. Tekahurangi stood on the far side of the hololith. The pale nomad wore armor the color of old bone, its surfaces inscribed with warding spirals and exile marks. Braided cords hung from his psychic hood. His eyes were closed, though the flesh around them had darkened to bruised violet. Or destroyed, the librarian said. Tyberos looked at him. Tekahurangi opened his eyes. There is no familiar corruption below, he said. No demonic spore. No warp echo shaped by mortal worship. The wrongness is absence. The strategium remained silent. The immaterium recoils from the southern vaults, the librarian continued. Astropathic transmissions routed through the lower prison hives disappear. They do not fail. They do not distort. They cease. Sanctioned psychers stationed near the excavation shafts suffer bleeding within the brain before they sense what lies beneath. Machine failure? Asked the master of the forge. The machines forget, Tekahurangi said. Geological surveys erase themselves. Servitors overwrite their own memory cores. Cogitators reject data they accepted moments before. Tyberos turned back towards Carceris. The mechanism exists. Yes. Others will seek it. Tekahurangi's gaze shifted towards the dark edge of the system. Yes. Then hesitation serves them. The council ended. Lord Jailer Othmar Krail arrived aboard the Nicor beneath a procession of banners. He brought censors, scribes, seal-bearers and armed wardens in lacquered carapace. His uniform was black and gold, his breast covered in devotional chains and legal medallions. His face had the pallor of a man who had spent his life beneath filtered lumen strips, issuing death orders from behind armored glass. The Carcharodons removed his escort at the docking gate. Krail entered the audience vault alone. Tyberos waited at the far end, flanked by 4 red brethren. The Lord Jailer halted. For several seconds he appeared unable to speak. "My lord," he managed, "Carceris welcomes the sons of the Emperor." Tyberos said nothing. Krail swallowed. The tithe has been prepared according to administratum assessment. 6 penal regiments, 3 labor drafts, 2,000 candidates of suitable age and constitution. Industrial quotas can be negotiated after review by my factors. We will make our own judgment. The words were quiet enough that Krail leaned forward before understanding them. "My lord, the candidates have been screened for discipline, loyalty, and compliance. You selected the obedient. They are stable. We did not ask for stability." Krail glanced at the Terminators. None moved. "The penal population is dangerous," he said. "Many are irredeemable." Tyberos's helm inclined by a fraction. "Good." Reconnaissance forces entered the prisons before Krail's shuttle returned to the surface. Carcharodon scouts moved through ventilation arteries coated in soot and corpse fat. They crossed collapsed oubliettes where generations of inmates had starved in darkness. They climbed lift shafts by driving blades into the walls, passing unseen behind patrols and execution teams. They marked the strong. Aspirant age youths were observed in fighting pits, labor gangs and isolation cells. Apothecarian runes were painted where prison augurs could not detect them. Veteran killers, armorers, Void technicians and demolition specialists were recorded for seizure. Hidden arsenals were mapped. Guard rotations were memorized. In the depths of penitentiary hive Tertius, the scouts found the first marked prisoners. The men had carved mouths into their own chests. Not crude mouths, not simple cuts. Each wound possessed lips, gums, and rows of teeth, shaped from slivers of bone pressed into bleeding flesh. The prisoners knelt around a sealed excavation shaft, rocking in perfect unison. All had removed their ears. One remained alive after capture. A scout held the man against the wall, while another inspected the scars. "What do you hear?" the Carcharodon asked. The prisoner smiled. Blood ran between the teeth embedded in his chest. "It sings below the screaming." The scout drove a combat blade through the man's palate and into his brain. The report reached Tyberos as the first gene-screening chambers were established in the orbital docks. Apothecaries prepared surgical stations. Tech Marines boarded the manufactoria with armed servitors and inventory clades. Red Brethren descended into the southern hives to map teleportation coordinates around the excavation shafts. Lord Jailer Krail sent 7 formal objections. Tyberos ignored them. At the beginning of the next labor cycle, every Vox speaker on Carceris activated. The sound came through prison tannoys, command bunkers, factory annunciators, and the internal channels of helmets, whose receivers had been physically removed. It spoke from servitor mouths. It whispered through broken Auspex units. It emerged from the throats of dead astropaths. The voice was beautiful, not merely pleasant. Beauty had been sharpened within it until it became invasive, a blade passing through reason and touching every buried hunger beneath. "My beloved prisoners," it said. "Across Carceris, men stopped working. You have been told that pain is duty, that obedience is virtue, that the ugliness of your lives is righteous because an ugly father demands it." Guards raised weapons. Prisoners lifted their heads. "I offer no pardon. A pardon accepts the jailer's right to condemn. I offer liberation from guilt, from duty, from restraint, from the jealous tyranny of a corpse who fears what you might become." In Gallows 9, a prisoner began to laugh. Another joined him. Then 1,000 voices rose in celebration. The collar charges detonated. Heads vanished along the assembly line in a rolling sequence. Bodies toppled into one another, while blood sprayed across machinery and walls. The explosions traveled through the hive in measured intervals, each burst separated by the same fraction of a second. A drumbeat made from execution. The beautiful voice laughed softly. Beyond the planet, the void split open. Warp fissures tore across the system as wounds of violet flame. Reality peeled backwards. Baroque warships emerged through storms of shrieking faces, their hulls covered in gilded blades, screaming statuary and living flesh. Shoals of demons circled them, burning in the cold. Wreckage from vessels destroyed elsewhere spilled through the breaches, still carrying corpses and atmosphere. At the center of the rupture descended a serpentine figure wreathed in impossible radiance. 4 arms spread in benediction. Vast wings unfolded behind him. Blades gleamed in his hands, while the coiling length of his body passed through fire without burning. Fulgrim had come to Carceris. Tyberos watched through the magnified pict feed. No one aboard the Nicor spoke. Hunger and Slake closed. Their chained teeth began to turn. Commence the harvest. Fulgrim beheld Carceris and found it wanting. The prison world turned beneath him, swaddled in ash, its continents armored in iron, and its seas poisoned to the color of old bruises. Hive penitentiaries rose through the cloud cover like blunt black nails driven into the flesh of the planet. Execution yards formed perfect squares between manufactorum districts. Transit rails carried chained populations from labor block to labor block with the regularity of blood passing through a diseased heart. It was misery without imagination. Fulgrim tasted the emotions rising from the world. Fear, exhaustion, hatred worn smooth by repetition. the dull ache of men who had learned that every tomorrow would resemble the day before it. Pain was administered according to quotas, authorized by seal and countersignature, then entered into ledgers by trembling clerks. Men were beaten because a regulation demanded it. They were starved because an overseer had failed to amend a ration schedule. They were executed beneath identical arches by jailers who had forgotten the names of the crimes they punished. How profoundly offensive. Cruelty should reveal something, a hidden weakness, a secret appetite, a buried truth beneath the lies men told themselves. On Carceris, suffering had been stripped of revelation and reduced to procedure. Fulgrim watched the world through the forward aperture of the Phoenician's grace. The command sanctum was fashioned from pearl-white bone and violet glass. Human figures had been fused into the walls, their bodies stretched until their rib cages resembled the strings of great instruments. Every breath they drew passed through silver reeds implanted in their throats, filling the chamber with a low, continuous chord. The demon Primarch rested upon the coils of his serpentine body. 4 arms spread around him in languid repose. In one hand, he held a curved blade, whose edge whispered insults in voices stolen from the dead. Another carried a plain, heavy sword that seemed almost austere amid the chamber's ornamentation. The weapon's simplicity was itself a form of arrogance. It required no decoration to command attention. His other hands remained empty. For now. "Grey," Fulgrim murmured. The officers gathered below his dais bowed lower. Grey walls, grey uniforms, grey hearts. They have mistaken deprivation for discipline and monotony for virtue. His smile revealed teeth too perfect for any mortal face. They have made agony tedious. Lord Exultants, warband masters, cacophonists, and favored killers filled the sanctum. Their armor displayed 100 interpretations of the Third Legion's corruption. Some wore lacquered plate, polished to mirror brightness. Others had opened their own breastplates and woven living nerves through the ceramite. One champion had replaced his face with a brass mask that changed expression according to the screams around him. Another wore the flayed hands of defeated duelists across his shoulders, each finger still twitching. All waited for approval. None received it. "Carceris shall be instructed," Fulgrim said. "Not conquered, not punished, instructed." The officers raised their heads. The corpse upon terror teaches mankind that virtue is restraint, duty, denial, submission to inherited shame. Fulgrim's voice softened, entering every listener like warm wine. "We shall teach them the truth. There is no sin beyond the refusal of desire. There is no crime beyond allowing another will to govern your own." A cacophonist trembled so violently that the amplifier horns grafted into his spine began to sing. Fulgrim glanced at him. The warrior stilled. "Go," said the Primarch. "Liberate them." The sanctum erupted into motion. The Emperor's children did not descend upon Carceris as a legion. That word implied common purpose, ordered ranks and submission to a single design. They came as rival courts, private armies, and competing visions of magnificence, each desperate to prove that its interpretation of excess surpassed all others. Lords Exultant hurled assault craft towards the orbital bastions before landing vectors had been properly calculated. Noise marine hosts opened fire upon defense monitors that other warbands had intended to board. Infractors packed themselves into breaching torpedoes, while tormentors advanced in disciplined gun lines across the decks of captured prison transports. Flawless blades transmitted challenges to enemy commanders who had never heard their names. Terminators vanished into the Empyrean without waiting for synchronized coordinates, trusting pride and the favor of their god to carry them through. Demon engines leapt from launch bays on trails of burning perfume. Mortal cults crowded into unshielded landers, chanting Fulgrim's titles, while radiation peeled the skin from their faces. Demonettes danced along the outer hulls of warships, untouched by vacuum, tracing claws across armor plating and leaving grooves that bled. Orders flowed from the Phoenicians' grace. They contradicted one another. One warlord was commanded to preserve an orbital refinery intact. A second received orders to destroy the same installation before the first could claim it. A third was told to reinforce both and punish whichever commander appeared less offended by the interference. Fulgrim watched their responses with interest. The unimaginative complained. The weak obeyed the first instruction they received and blamed the resulting failure upon circumstance. The gifted understood. They lied, adapted, betrayed, and made something new from the impossibility. Those were the sons worth keeping. The first orbital bastion fell before the planetary authorities completed their appeal for aid. Its captor was Lord Exultant Ariston Klein, a towering warrior in rose gold plate whose left arm had been remade as a nest of articulated blades. Klein preserved the bastion's command staff and transmitted a request that Fulgrim witness the tribute personally. The Primarch indulged him. He entered the conquered strategium through a breach carved in the hull. Atmosphere streamed past him towards the void, carrying loose parchment, shell casings, and droplets of blood. Emergency fields flickered across the shattered chamber. Imperial officers knelt in 3 rows before the command dais, each man stripped to the waist and bound with his own devotional cords. Klein stood behind them. "My father," he said, "the bastion is yours. Its guns remain serviceable. Its officers await your judgment." Fulgrim surveyed the captives. The arrangement was symmetrical, painfully symmetrical. The tallest prisoners had been placed in the center. The wounded occupied the outer ranks. Blood had been allowed to gather in matching pools beneath them. Even the angles of their bowed heads had been corrected. Fulgrim sighed. Klein's confidence faltered. "You showed restraint," Fulgrim said. The Lord Exultant bowed. "I sought to preserve what might please you." "How thoughtful." Fulgrim descended from the breach, his coils gliding through the blood. He stopped before Klein and raised one hand to the champion's helm. "You have mistaken neatness for beauty. My father, The heavy sword entered beneath Klein's throat. Fulgrim drew the blade downwards with delicate care. Ceramite opened, rib plating parted. The fused flesh beneath came apart in glistening layers. Klein remained alive, while the blade passed through his chest and abdomen, splitting his torso from neck to pelvis. His secondary heart burst against the sword. Black blood poured over Fulgrim's hand. Both lungs sagged through the opening, steaming in the escaping atmosphere. Klein tried to speak. Only blood emerged. Fulgrim reached into the wound and drew out a length of intestine, studying its color with mild dissatisfaction before letting it fall across the deck. "Continue the briefing," he told the surviving officers. No one moved. Fulgrim looked towards Klein's equerry. The warrior's helm lenses widened. "The briefing," Fulgrim repeated. The equerry began to speak, while his commander's organs slid from the opened cavity and gathered around his boots. Orbital war consumed the sky. Sonic lances struck Carceris' defense ships at frequencies chosen not merely to overload void shields, but to pass through them as sensation. Crews collapsed at their stations. Men clawed at their own mouths, ripping teeth from bleeding gums in the belief that the unbearable vibration originated within their jaws. Servitors tore themselves from control thrones, trailing cables and spinal matter across the decks. Boarding torpedoes hammered into prison transports, packed with chained soldiers. The first infractors emerged before the breech doors finished opening. They struck the corridors at a run, blades raised, combat elixirs pumping through altered veins. Prisoners were shackled shoulder to shoulder along the bulkheads, unable to flee or raise their hands in defense. The infractors moved through them like harvesting engines. Heads burst beneath powered mauls. Bodies opened from groin to sternum. Chain blades dragged loops of intestine through the air and wrapped them around light fixtures. A prisoner caught between two charging warriors was reduced to fragments of rib, muscle, and cloth before his neighbors understood he had died. Then, the noise marines entered. Blastmasters discharged within the confined passageways. The first wave of sound ruptured armor seals and burst lungs. The second vibrated flesh from bone. Men became red clouds inside their own uniforms, skulls splitting as liquefied brains sprayed through eye sockets and nostrils. Severed nerves continued to transmit for several heartbeats after the bodies containing them had ceased to exist. Fulgrim felt every instant. He tasted the fear of men who survived long enough to understand what was happening to them. He savored the moment when pain exceeded comprehension and became something pure, stripped of language and identity. Better. Still crude, but better. Carceris' primary defense platform opened fire as the Phoenicians' Grace crossed the planet's northern pole. Macro cannon shells passed close enough to shake the flagship's shields. Defense lasers stabbed through 2 Emperor's Children escorts and cut a mortal transport apart. Thousands of cultists spilled into the void, bodies freezing while they continued their hymn across open Vox channels. Fulgrim rose. "My sons are making a spectacle of this," he said. "I suppose I should contribute." He stepped through the open breach. The void embraced him. His wings unfolded, vast and iridescent, every pinion reflecting a different color from the Empyrean. Warp fire coiled around his body as he crossed the distance between flagship and platform. Defense batteries tracked him. Targeting cogitators attempted to define his speed and dimensions, then returned mutually impossible data. The first shell passed beneath him. The second he caught. Adamantium screamed against his palm. The macro projectile was larger than a battle tank and traveled with enough force to gut a warship. Fulgrim turned with it, redirected its flight, and released it towards the platform's own lance array. The impact erased an entire gun deck. He landed upon the platform's hull while its weapons still fired. His coils struck armor hard enough to deform meters of plating. Crews within were pulped against bulkheads. Fulgrim drove the plane sword downward. The blade passed through adamantium, structural bracing and pressure decks, as though cutting damp parchment. He tore the wound open. Atmosphere exploded from the platform. Macro cannon crews were ripped from their stations. Men struck the edges of the breach and came apart, leaving arms, legs, and open torsos spinning into space. Fulgrim's whip uncoiled from one hand, snapped through the command deck, and wrapped around 6 officers at once. He pulled. They came through armor glass and metal in pieces. Fulgrim descended into the opening. The survivors saw him and knelt. They knelt while decompression burst blood vessels in their eyes. They knelt while lungs collapsed and exposed flesh froze. One officer removed his rebreather to praise the Primarch more clearly, his final words dissolving into a froth of blood. Fulgrim passed among them as though walking across fallen petals. He reached the command core, placed one hand upon its central throne, and whispered a command into the machine spirit. Every surviving gun on the platform turned towards Carceris. The bombardment began. On the surface, liberation spread. Emperor's Children infiltrators seized collar control sanctums and altered the penal codes. Some prisoners discovered they could murder guards without triggering punishment. Others exploded for stepping across lines painted upon the floor by laughing cultists. In one block, weapons were distributed, but no food. In another, food was piled in the center, while the prisoners remained chained at the walls. Narcotics were pumped through ventilation systems. Cell doors opened in random sequences. Men who had spent decades dreaming of escape found themselves released into corridors filled with other men who had spent decades imagining what they would do if no law remained. Fulgrim watched through 1,000 stolen senses. Murderers became kings for minutes at a time. Cowards discovered appetites they had hidden even from themselves. Guards begged former prisoners for mercy and received creative answers. Entire cell populations were promised that the last living man would be pardoned. None asked who possessed the authority to pardon them.
their first mistake. Their final mistake was believing the promise mattered. Yet through the rising ecstasy of panic, Fulgrim sensed something that did not belong. A mind moved through the emotional storm below. It was not bright, not loud. It possessed none of the glorious instability of hatred, devotion, or fear. It pressed against Fulgrim's awareness like the weight of an ocean without sunlight, cold and ancient and entirely indifferent to being observed. Tyberos. The Shade Lord did not hate him enough. He did not fear him with sufficient imagination. Most offensive of all, he did not admire him. Fulgrim's smile faded. There were few insults greater than indifference. Hatred acknowledged significance. Fear recognized power. Envy was praise stripped of honesty. Tyberos offered none of them. His thoughts remained fixed upon objectives, resources, routes of attack, and acceptable sacrifice. An imperfection. Fulgrim found himself fascinated. Penitentiary Hive Tertius rose beneath him as a mountain of gunmetal and smoke. The Hive's defenders had gathered armored formations across its upper causeways. Leman Russ battle tanks formed firing lines behind prefabricated barricades. Basilisks elevated their guns from trench revetments. Infantry filled every gantry and execution square. Laser guns raised towards the violet sky. Fulgrim descended. Battle cannon shells exploded around him. He crossed kilometers in vast wing-assisted leaps, each impact cracking ferrocrete. His whip entered the vision slit of the lead Leman Russ, wrapped around the commander, and tore him through an opening too narrow for his shoulders. Flesh peeled from bone. The man emerged as a streaming knot of organs and broken limbs. Fulgrim's heavy blade struck the tank. The Leman Russ split lengthwise. Ammunition ignited. The turret rose upon a column of fire and crushed an infantry platoon when it fell. Fulgrim passed through the explosion, armor shining, hair untouched by flame. Another blade appeared in his upper hand, long and curved, its surface moving like liquid. He swept it across a gun line. Men divided at the waist. Upper bodies slid from legs. Entrails slapped across the barricades in wet coils. His talons opened a basilisk from engine deck to prow. He reached inside, closed his hand around the crew compartment, and squeezed. Blood jetted through every seam. The defenders broke. Fulgrim allowed them to run. Pursuit lacked meaning when terror had already entered the marrow. Deep within Hive Tertius, his sons brought him Magos excavator Helion Rask. The priest of Mars had replaced most of his body with excavation augmetics. His lower limbs ended in stabilizing claws. Survey lenses filled one side of his skull. Pain governors and emotional dampers glowed beneath transparent plates along his spine. Fulgrim removed them one by one. Rask screamed when sensation returned to nerves that had not functioned for a century. Fulgrim adjusted the Magos' implants until he could feel every fiber of his remaining flesh independently. Then he opened him, slowly, skin first, muscle after. Each layer peeled back without granting unconsciousness. Fulgrim allowed Rask to perceive his own organs shifting beneath the surgical touch. He amplified the sensation of air crossing exposed nerves. He made every drop of blood feel like molten metal, abandoning the body. "What lies beneath this world?" Fulgrim asked. Rask attempted Binharic denial. Fulgrim increased his awareness of the screws anchoring his augmetics into bone. The Magos spoke. "Acheron," he gasped. "Continuance engine, pre-imperial, planetary neural lattice, reality stabilization function unknown." Fulgrim paused. Below him, beneath the prisons and furnaces and mountains of iron, something ancient slept within a network already joined to billions of human nervous systems. A device that might force the warp away, or inverted, force sensation outward. Not a shield, an instrument. Carceris could become a throat through which whole systems screamed. Fulgrim rose, leaving Rask alive and spread open across the excavation altar. "Inform the warbands," he said. "The population is not to be squandered." His sons received the order with confusion. That pleased him. "Take the strong alive. Preserve the collar networks.
Break their hope, not their nerves. I require a choir. Fulgrim extended his awareness towards the cold presence moving below. This time, he shaped the thought into words meant for one mind alone. Come below, little predator. Let us discover which of us has the greater hunger. The invasion did not alter the red tithe. It refined it. Tyberos watched the crucible yards through a bank of descending picked feeds, while the surface of Carceris burned beneath orbital bombardment. Static crawled across the images whenever the Emperor's children vessels discharged their sonic batteries. Execution towers trembled. Razor-wire fences sagged between plasteel posts. Smoke rolled through the trial grounds in bruised clouds, lit from within by burning promethium and the violet glare of the wounded sky. Below, tens of thousands of prisoners waited behind armored gates. Some stared upwards, some prayed, some sharpened pieces of scrap against the floor. The Shade Lord saw no reason to delay. Fear would strip away pretense. Hunger would reveal patience. Battle would expose cowardice, ingenuity, and the instinct to use another man's death as a shield. Controlled trials produced obedience. Carceris had already bred enough of that. "Open the blocks," Tyberos said. The order passed through the Nicor, into the planetary command lattice, and down through the prison world's failing noosphere. Lord Jailer Krail protested at once. "My lord, the western districts are under bombardment. The outer yards have suffered containment failures. There are escaped prisoners, corrupted servitors, and hostile transhuman elements within the trial perimeter." Tyberos regarded the Lord Jailer's image without answering. Krail's throat moved inside the collar of his formal uniform. The aspirant stock may be lost. Then it was not suitable. The transmission ended. Across the prison complexes, the population had already been divided. The youngest candidates occupied isolation blocks, surrounded by Carcharodon apothecaries and armed serfs. Their blood had been tested for mutation, metabolic weakness, and compatibility with the chapter's ancient implantation rites. Their bones had been measured. Their reflexes had been observed beneath pain. Those displaying sufficient promise received a pale sigil burned into the flesh beneath one shoulder, a mark invisible beneath prison rags, but readable to the gene scanners of the fleet. The adults were assigned other futures. Void-trained men were catalogued for ship clans. Foundry workers, armorers, and reactor technicians were marked for industrial bondage. Veterans, killers, and those who displayed useful resistance to terror were classified as auxiliary stock. Men of no discernible value remained unmarked. They understood what that meant. Some begged to be taken, others attacked the Carcharodons assessing them. The second group was judged more closely. The gates of the crucible yards opened. Prisoners surged into the maze. The trial grounds covered a region large enough to contain a city. Walls of black ferrocrete divided it into execution courts, maintenance trenches, abandoned armories, loading depots, and kilometers of razor entanglement. Automated gun positions still recognized every prisoner as a fugitive. Chem fog spilled from ruptured purification towers, burning exposed skin and filling lungs with the taste of metal. Malfunctioning punishment servitors wandered the avenues, their shock mauls swinging at anything that moved. The extraction gates stood at the center. They remained locked. The prisoners had not been told that. The first mass ran towards the nearest towers. Heavy stubbers opened fire, bodies folded beneath the impacts. Rounds punched through several men at once, spraying blood and fragments of spine across those behind them. A prisoner lost half his face and continued forward for 3 steps before colliding with the wire. Another climbed over him, using the dying man's shoulders to reach the top of the barricade. The wire was electrified. His flesh blackened. Fingers contracted around the strands and cooked there, filling the air with greasy smoke. Men behind him dragged his body down and laid it across the coils. Then they climbed over him. Carcharodon observers watched from concealed positions. They did not reward courage. They recorded results. One youth reached an abandoned armory and found the doors sealed.
Rather than striking them until the guns killed him, he hid beneath the bodies of those who did. When the servitor turret rotated away, he cut a charge from a dead demolition prisoner's harness and blew the hinges inward. Another candidate gathered 6 weaker men and sent them across an open lane to draw fire. While the automated weapons dismembered them, he crossed through a drainage culvert beneath the lane. A third found a wounded guard and used the man's severed hand to open a biometric lock. Marks were entered beside their names. Above the crucible yards, the Emperor's Children fleet continued its descent. Across the eastern prison continent, martial convict Dren Varro studied a tactical display constructed from cracked slate screens and scavenged hololithic emitters. His command bunker had once been a waste administration office. The walls still carried instructional murals explaining how prison laborers were to report blockages caused by human remains. Varro wore a faded militarum greatcoat over black carapace armor. The coat had once carried the badges of a siege regiment. Every insignia had been cut away, leaving only pale scars in the fabric. A thick explosive collar encircled his neck. His crime was printed beneath it in brass letters: mass execution of superior officers. Varro had commanded artillery during a siege whose name had been expunged from public record. When his general staff ordered an immediate withdrawal through an enemy kill zone, Varro shot the commanding general, poisoned 2 colonels, and sealed the remaining officers inside a bunker before directing the retreat himself. Most of the regiment survived. The Imperium rewarded him with transportation to Carceris. The black chain cohorts assembled beneath him. Former stormtroopers checked compact lascarbines and grenade launchers. Hive assassins sharpened monomolecular blades against armor plates. Pirates loaded shot cannons with shells packed with scrap metal. Cannibals carried flame units taken from corpse-rendering crews. Murderers, mutineers, and arsonists locked breaching shields together, while combat stimulants entered their blood through collar-mounted injectors. Demolition charges hung from restraint harnesses across their chests. The charges could be removed. The men wearing them could not survive the attempt. 3 prison districts lay between Varro and the approaching Emperor's Children. His provost liaison demanded that he hold all 3. Varro abandoned them. He evacuated ammunition, sealed the hab levels, and ordered the sewer pressure gates opened. Compacting machinery forced millions of tons of industrial refuse into the transit arteries: chemical sludge, bone meal, incinerator ash, molten polymers, and the partially rendered remains of executed prisoners. Then, his sappers mined the retaining walls. The infractors entered the districts at speed. They came howling through the deserted avenues, their power armor painted in violet, rose and poisoned gold. Blades rose from their gauntlets. Combat elixirs hissed through transparent tubes into swollen necks. They found doors hanging open, weapon racks emptied, and barricades abandoned. They believed the defenders had fled. Varro watched them advance into the waste reprocessing canyon. "Wait," said his provost liaison. The infractors reached the central transit span. "Wait." The last warriors entered the canyon. Varro pressed the detonator. The retaining walls vanished. Millions of tons of compacted waste collapsed upon the Emperor's Children. The first wave struck like an avalanche, carrying broken machinery, liquefied corpses, and industrial acid. A traitor Marine disappeared beneath the surge, with one arm still raised. Another was hurled against the canyon wall, hard enough to crack his breastplate. Toxic sludge entered the fractures and began dissolving the flesh within. The black chains attacked before the flood settled. Melter charges struck corrupted armor and turned torsos into fountains of glowing metal. Lasfire converged upon helm lenses, joints, and damaged power packs. Grenades detonated inside the waste, filling it with fragments of rusted iron and human bone. An infractor dragged himself free. Half his face had been burned away. Exposed teeth grinned through a cheek of red muscle. He seized a black chain trooper and pushed both thumbs through the man's eye sockets. The skull gave way. Brain matter ran over the warrior's gauntlets.
3 prisoners fired upon him at once. Lasbolts scorched his breastplate. A 4th crawled beneath his reach and pressed a melter charge against his groin seal. The detonation cut the traitor Marine in half. His upper body continued fighting until Varro's shot cannon removed the head. "Advance," said the martial convict. "Kill anything still singing." Elsewhere, the Carcharodons were disassembling Carceris. Tech Marines entered Manufactoria under armed escort and pronounced judgment upon every machine they found. Automated haulers rolled towards the orbital lifters, carrying ceramite stock, reactor shielding, macro shells, replacement armor plate, promethium reservoirs, and fabrication tools too valuable to leave behind. Administratum officials gathered before the primary loading platform. They carried seals, warrants, and ledgers protected within armored cases. Their spokesman stepped into the path of a crawler transporting void ship plating. "This material belongs to the Imperial War." "Effort," he declared. Tyberos stood upon the platform above him. The officials looked very small beneath the gaze of his skull-faced helm. "We are the Imperial War effort keeping you alive," he said. The spokesman raised a, "My lord, seizure without sector authorization constitutes..." A Red Brethren Terminator fired once. The mass-reactive shell entered the official's chest and detonated inside his ribcage. His upper body came apart in a red burst. Wet fragments struck the men around him. One remained standing with part of the spokesman's jaw embedded in his cheek. The others lowered their ledgers. The haulers continued. Takahurangi found the truth beneath the penal registry. He stood within the central archive of Hive Tertius, surrounded by stacked cogitator banks and hanging chains of punched brass data plates. Every prisoner on Carceris existed within that archive as a sequence of offenses, punishments, labor assignments, and biological measurements. The pale nomad laid one gauntlet against the primary census engine. The machine recognized him, not as an administrator, as an intrusion. Cold pressure entered his skull. The archive unfolded through his psychic senses, revealing structures beneath the data, older than the Imperium and hidden inside the prison world systems. Every collar was a node. Every identity brand was a designation. Every punishment implant, labor tally, and census entry had expanded a network whose true architecture descended beneath the crust. The prisons had not been built above the buried mechanism by chance. Carceris had imitated it. The Imperium believed it had created a civilization of confinement. In truth, generation after generation of jailers had been following patterns whispered upward from the machine below. Cells resembled containment matrices. Population blocks mirrored neural clusters. Penal registries copied control hierarchies no Imperial savant understood. Takahurangi withdrew his hand. Blood ran from his nose. "It counts them," he said. The tech marine beside him tilted his helm. "The prisoners?" "All of them." A distant vibration passed through the archive. The brass plates began to chime against one another. At the crucible yards, the first noise marines reached the execution towers. They climbed through shattered gun emplacements and took position above the prisoners. Amplifier horns spread from their armor like metallic flowers. Sonic blasters were raised. Blastmasters unfolded upon stabilizing limbs. The opening note rolled across the yards. Men stopped running. Their clothing fluttered without wind. Then their eyes burst. The second note struck lower. Rib cages vibrated inward. Bones splintered through lungs. Prisoners collapsed, coughing blood, each breath drawing fragments deeper into their bodies. One man tore open his own chest as if he could pull the sound out with his hands. The blastmasters fired. A wave crossed the trial ground. Thousands ceased to resemble men. Flesh separated from bone in curtains. Skulls remained intact, while the brains within became liquid and poured through mouths and nostrils. Bodies burst against the razor wire, coating it in strings of intestine and shredded muscle. The survivors ran towards the extraction gates. The gates did not open. A Carcharodon serf checked the trial tally. "The required sequence is incomplete," he reported. The apothecary beside him watched prisoners hammering against the other side. Maintain closure. A man reached through the bars. The next sonic wave stripped the flesh from his arm, leaving red muscle and white finger bones gripping the gate. Still, it remained shut. Teleportation lightning filled the central yard. Kahu and the Red Wrath arrived inside the Noise Marine firing line. The Terminators materialized with storm bolters already discharging. Mass reactive shells struck corrupted plate and detonated within it. One Noise Marine lost his amplifier crown, then his head. Another was driven backwards through the parapet in pieces. Kahu advanced. His chain fist entered a blast master emplacement and tore through weapon, armor, and the warrior operating it. The chain teeth dragged metal and organs into the housing. The machine screamed through its own speakers as it died. The Red Wrath did not answer with battle cries. They fired. They stepped forward. They killed. A Noise Marine was caught between the advancing Terminators and the tower wall. His armor split beneath the pressure. Black blood ran from every joint before his body ruptured and emptied itself across the stone. Infractors entered the yard through the western breach. They struck the prisoners first, hacking a corridor through them. Blades opened backs and exposed white spines. A powered axe took 3 heads in one swing. Bodies piled beneath the traitor Marine's boots until they were walking upon the dead. Then Tyberos came. He moved through the breach with Hunger and Slake turning. An infractor lunged. Tyberos shifted half a pace. Slake closed around the warrior's extended arm. Barbed blades pierced the vambrace. Chain teeth caught the elbow joint and dragged the limb deeper. Ceramite shattered. Flesh wound around the mechanism in strips. The arm separated at the shoulder. Hunger entered the gap beneath the infractor's gorget. The claws closed. The head came away with part of the spine attached. Tyberos discarded it before the body fell. 2 more attacked from opposite sides. He used the first corpse as an obstacle, driving it beneath the feet of the warrior on his left. The infractor stumbled. Tyberos struck the other at the hip joint, severing power cables and cutting through the pelvis. The traitor Marine collapsed sideways with his abdomen opened, organs steaming inside broken armor. Tyberos stepped upon his chest and tore the progenoid cavity apart. The second recovered. Hunger split his breastplate from shoulder to sternum. Slake entered the wound. The chainmaw pulled ribs, lung tissue, and both hearts into its teeth. Blood sprayed across Tyberos's helm in a hot sheet. His breathing did not change. The assault cadre surrounded him. Tyberos killed them by sequence: knee actuator, gorget, weapon hand, hip seal, power pack. He wasted no movement and offered no challenge. Each strike created the position for the next. Corpses became barriers. Severed limbs fouled the footing. A dying traitor Marine reached for him and had his fingers ground away before Slake passed through the wrist and into the face beneath. When the final infractor fell, Tyberos was already turning towards the towers. Then every collar on Carceris emitted the same tone. The sound was soft, pure. It passed through the crucible yards, the manufactoria, the prison hives, and the orbital docks. Soldiers froze. Prisoners clutched at their throats. Even the Noise Marines lowered their weapons, listening. Geometric seams appeared across the ground. They opened without dust or fracture. Beneath the execution yards lay metal darker than iron, descending in perfect angles beyond the range of auspex or lumen. The revealed structures continued downward, like the interior of a machine large enough to contain the world. Runes flooded the displays of every Carcharodon helm. The language was dead. Then it translated itself. Acheron Continuance Network. Custodial population threshold achieved. Material reality enforcement available. Tyberos looked into the opening. Something beneath the mantle awakened. It began counting the living. Carceris learned to sing beneath Fulgrim's hand. The first notes came from the punishment towers. Lord Cacophonists seized the collar control sanctums, while their warriors butchered the adepts chained to the command thrones. Brass augmetic fingers moved across blood-slick consoles. Binharic's security cant was drowned beneath shrieking harmonics. Vox networks designed to carry execution orders, labor quotas, and confessions of guilt were open to the Emperor's children, and every restraint collar upon the world became part of a single instrument. Fulgrim listened from the upper atmosphere. He hung above the cloud deck with his wings extended, untouched by the poisoned winds. Lightning moved around his serpentine form, violet and gold, illuminating the distant warships in flashes. Beneath him, the prison continent stretched from horizon to horizon, smothered in smoke and lit by the furnace glare of burning hives. The detonation began in the east. One collar exploded. A man's head vanished from his shoulders. The charge around his vertebrae drove bone fragments through the prisoners standing beside him. His last neural impulse traveled through the penal network before his body understood that it was dead. A second charge followed, then another. The executions crossed Gallows 9 in measured intervals, continued through Penitentiary Hive Tertius, and traveled south through the Manufactorum belts. Tens of thousands became hundreds of thousands. Each severed spine gave the same bright pulse. Each death entered the ancient mechanism buried beneath the crust. The timing was not random. Nothing worthy of Fulgrim's attention was random. Lord Cacophonists adjusted the sequence according to atmospheric pressure, reactor vibration, and the delay of the planetary Vox grid. Factory sirens wailed between the detonations. Orbital warning klaxons answered from above. The deep pulse of void shield generators became a bass note. Great stamping presses struck in rhythm as prisoners continued laboring beside the headless bodies of their work gangs. Millions died. The sound passed beyond hearing. Fulgrim felt it through the warp as a tremor of surrender, pain, and startled recognition. For the briefest instant, every victim became perfectly aware of his own mortality. That knowledge entered the Acheron network before dissolving into silence. The demon Primarch closed his eyes. "Again," he whispered. The second sequence was more intricate. Entire districts lost their heads in spiraling patterns. A ring of executions moved around one hive while its center remained untouched. The surviving prisoners heard the blasts approaching level by level, corridor by corridor, and knew with mathematical certainty that death was traveling towards them. Their terror ripened. Fulgrim smiled. The war below fragmented into 100 competing performances. Tormentors advanced behind corrupted armor columns, bolters firing in disciplined volleys. Their first ranks maintained the old forms of the Legion, marking targets and cutting down defenders with measured precision. The discipline lasted until blood touched their armor. Then personal appetites asserted themselves. One warrior broke formation to hunt a black chain officer whose defiance pleased him. Another abandoned his squad to fire repeatedly into a dying prisoner, adjusting each shot to produce a different pattern of mutilation. A third opened his own gorget to breathe the smoke rising from burning bodies and was decapitated by a mining laser. The tormentors around him applauded before resuming the advance. Infractors struck the fortresses. Combat elixirs flooded their veins as they climbed barricades under last fire. They drove power blades into firing ports, dragged screaming defenders through apertures too narrow for armored bodies, and hacked entryways through men when doors proved inconvenient. One seized a prisoner by both ankles and used him as a flail until the man's spine tore free from his pelvis. Flawless blades transmitted challenges across the Imperial Vox channels. They named themselves in full, reciting ancient honors and the worlds upon which they had perfected murder. They demanded champions, officers, and killers of distinction. When no answer came, they entered the Black Chain command nets and selected opponents by reviewing casualty reports. "Marshal Convict Harl Draven," one announced. "Your defense of the Eastern Railhead possessed a certain ugly merit. Present yourself, and I shall improve it by ending you." Draven replied with the coordinates of a minefield. The flawless blade went there alone. The detonation took both his legs. He continued crawling towards the black chain lines, laughing while prisoners shot him through the helm lenses. Noise marines occupied execution towers, transit pylons, and manufactorum roofs. Their sonic weapons reduced bunkers to powder. Barricades vibrated apart. Men behind them burst before the walls failed. Their bodies transformed into red paste that ran from doors and firing slits. Terminators struck without warning. They plunged through the warp into command bunkers, armories and artillery parks, arriving in storms of perfume and frost. Some materialized correctly. Others emerged fused to walls, weapons or the bodies of their own brothers. Those who survived tore through the defenders, then vanished again before the Carcharodons could bring sufficient force against them. The Imperial authorities armed the prison world. More than 2 billion condemned men received weapons. Autoguns were dragged from reserve vaults where they had rusted for centuries. Mining lasers were cut from industrial mounts. Demolition tools, cutting torches, shock mauls and rivet guns were issued beside sharpened scrap. Entire hab blocks were given crates of ammunition without weapons, while neighboring districts received rifles of the wrong caliber. The resulting armies possessed no coherent command. Some followed jailers because their collars remained active. Others murdered the jailers and formed their own companies around former soldiers. Gang lords or whichever killer appeared least likely to betray them immediately. Prison trains became armored troop carriers. Ore haulers carried gun platforms welded to their loading beds. Execution carts were overturned and used as barricades. The war stretched across continents. Front lines formed along burning railways and collapsed manufactoria. Artillery fired without observers, guided by obsolete maps and hatred. Tanks ground through crowds too dense to disperse, their tracks compacting bodies into layers of bone, armor cloth, and meat. When the vehicles passed, the dead had become part of the road. The wounded lay where they fell. There were too many to recover, and too few medici personnel willing to try. Men crawled through fields of severed limbs, searching for water, ammunition, or someone weaker than themselves. Fires moved through the corpse piles as promethium leaked from broken engines. Fat burned, hair burned, clothing fused into skin. The demons came where terror became dense enough to bleed. Seekers raced along vertical hive walls, clawed limbs finding purchase upon smooth plasteel. They moved faster than targeting cogitators could follow, passing between lasbolts and leaping through gun emplacements. Riders bent low over their sinuous mounts, laughing as hooked weapons tore heads from defenders. Fiends crossed minefields in convulsions of impossible speed. Their limbs bent at angles that changed between one stride and the next. Mines detonated beneath them, filling the air with soil, metal, and chunks of demon flesh. The wounds closed before the smoke cleared. Demonettes poured through breaches opened by panic. They killed prisoners and guards with equal affection. Claws opened men from throat to groin. Hands entered rib cages and withdrew holding hearts that still convulsed. Some victims knelt willingly, smiling through tears as their intestines slid across their thighs. Keepers of secrets appeared only where slaughter reached the proper intensity. One stepped into existence amid a black chain counterattack at the prison city of Mordain. The demon rose above the tanks, horned and perfumed, its skin gleaming beneath the ash. Its arrival brought every weapon on both sides to silence. Then the soldiers began killing one another, not from compulsion alone. The keeper showed each man the face of the person he most wished to punish. Brothers shot brothers. Jailers embraced prisoners before cutting their throats. Tank crews opened their own hatches and dragged one another onto the hulls. The demon walked through the massacre, trailing laughter and incense. Fulgrim watched all of it. He praised invention. He punished waste. The warband known as the Gilded Ruin captured Punishment District Castra before the defenders understood they had been attacked. Their commander, Lord Exultant Mirian, ordered every prisoner killed to demonstrate efficiency. Bolter fire filled the cells. Flamers consumed the survivors. More than 6 million men died in less than an hour. Their fear never entered the Acheron network in sufficient depth. Death had come too quickly. Fulgrim descended into the district after the guns fell silent. Mirian presented himself amid rows of corpses arranged by height. His warriors knelt behind him, their armor splashed with soot and blood. "The district is cleansed, my father," Mirian said. "No resistance remains." Fulgrim walked among the dead. He touched the face of a prisoner whose skull had been opened by a bolt round. Brain matter glistened in the broken cavity. The man had died before terror could fully flower. "Cleansed," Fulgrim repeated. Mirian bowed lower. "In your honor." "No." Fulgrim turned. "You hurried." The Lord Exultant looked up. "You mistook destruction for achievement. You silenced the instrument before it could play." "My father, I sought only—" "Intent is the refuge of those unable to perfect the result." Fulgrim ordered the gilded ruin disarmed. Their armor was locked around them, weapon systems disabled and joints restricted. They were placed alive in the central execution yard. The few prisoners who had survived beneath corpses and collapsed walls were brought before them. Industrial saws were distributed. The prisoners hesitated. Fulgrim smiled. "They killed your brothers," he said. "Your fathers, your sons. They believed your suffering had no value beyond proving their strength." He pointed towards the bound traitor Marines. "Correct them." The prisoners attacked. Saw blades shrieked against ceramite. Cutting torches burned through seals. Men climbed across the immobilized warriors, driving drills into armor joints and pouring promethium into the wounds. One emperor's child laughed, while prisoners opened his abdomen and dragged his intestines around his own throat. Another screamed praises to Fulgrim as an industrial blade soared through his pelvis. Mirian survived longest. The prisoners removed his armor plate by plate. They broke his fingers with hammers. They cut away his face and fed strips of it to him. When only his torso remained, propped amid the dismantled bodies of his warriors, Fulgrim approached. Mirian wept with gratitude. "You have learned," Fulgrim said. He removed the Lord Exultant's head with one perfect stroke. The black chains responded with a cruelty Fulgrim found refreshingly honest. They filled prison transports with corpses. Each dead man was packed with promethium gel, fragmentation charges, and unstable reactor cells. The bodies were wired to vehicle detonators and stacked in the compartments until flesh pressed against the doors. The unmanned transports rolled towards the Emperor's children lines. Tormentors opened fire. Bolter shells tore through the vehicle hulls and entered the packed dead. The explosions came together. Corpse matter, burning fuel and shrapnel erupted across the battlefield. Armor joints clogged with bone fragments. Promethium gel adhered to ceramite and burned hotter when warriors attempted to scrape it away. One tormentor removed his helm as flaming human fat entered the seals. A black chain marksman shot him through the mouth. Other condemned soldiers traveled through the sewer arteries beneath demon engine mustering grounds. They crawled chest-deep through chemical filth and liquefied human waste, dragging melter mines behind them. Several suffocated when the tunnels narrowed. Their comrades used the bodies to dam the flow while placing charges beneath the iron limbs of the engines above. The detonation lifted a corrupted war machine from the ground. It fell on its side, demonic mouths opening along its hull. Black chain soldiers swarmed it with cutting torches, while it screamed through every Vox channel in the district. Fulgrim admired them. Their methods lacked elegance. They possessed no appreciation for proportion, rhythm, or visual harmony. Yet they understood that the dead remained useful. They understood that flesh, once stripped of sentiment, was merely another material of war. Carceris had produced more than prisoners. It had produced craftsmen of necessity. The black chain-armored brigade advanced across the ashen expanse before Hive Tertius. Baneblades led the formation. Their enormous tracks crushed wreckage and bodies into the black earth. Super-heavy transports followed behind them, carrying breaching companies and demolition cadres. Lehman Russ squadrons guarded the flanks, while artillery batteries fired over open sights. Fulgrim descended among them. The first Baneblade fired its volcano cannon. His whip moved. It crossed the barrel at the instant of discharge and pulled the weapon aside. The beam struck the neighboring tank, cutting through armor, engine block, and ammunition stores. The Baneblade became a white sphere of fire. Its turret landed hundreds of meters away, with crewmen still burning inside it. Secondary guns turned towards Fulgrim. They were too slow. He passed between streams of tracer fire, wings folding and opening as he changed direction. His plain sword entered a super-heavy transport below the command deck and emerged through the opposite side. The vehicle continued moving. Then both halves separated. Soldiers spilled from the opened interior. Some were crushed beneath the tracks. Others emerged burning, uniforms fused to skin. Fulgrim landed among them and swept a curved blade through the crowd. Heads and arms rose together in a red arc. A Baneblade attempted to reverse. Fulgrim caught it by the prow. His coils dug. Trenches through the ground as the engines fought him. Metal screamed. Track links snapped. He lifted one side of the tank and overturned it onto an infantry company. Men vanished beneath thousands of tons of armor. Those not crushed began to run. Fulgrim allowed them 3 breaths. Then he opened his wings. His presence passed across them. The prisoners slowed. One by one, they turned. Terror became wonder. Wonder became yearning. Men dropped their weapons and walked back towards him, tears cutting pale paths through the soot upon their faces. "Beautiful," one whispered. Fulgrim took his head. The others continued coming. They thanked him while he dismembered them. They knelt as his whip tore men apart beside them. One kissed the blood running from his blade before Fulgrim opened him from shoulder to hip. When the last soldier died, the ashen expanse resembled a butcher's floor. Fulgrim returned to Magos excavator Helion Rask. The priest of Mars remained alive within Hive Tertius. His body had been suspended above an excavation altar, flesh and augmetics separated into careful layers. Tubes preserved his blood pressure. Hooks held nerves away from muscle. His remaining organic eye tracked Fulgrim's approach. "Explain the engine," Fulgrim said. Rask's voice emerged through a damaged grille. "Dark Age provenance. Original designation uncertain. Local reference rendered as Acheron Continuance Network. I know its name. The mechanism imposes constants." Fulgrim leaned closer. "Upon what?" "Material law, causality, dimensional stability, biological state. It was designed to force selected regions into fixed physical compliance. A shield against the warp? Possibly. A prison for demons? Possibly. A weapon against psychic life? Rask's exposed lung expanded beneath the preservation field. Possibly. Fulgrim traced one talon along a bundle of revealed nerves. The Magos screamed. "What does it require?" "Consciousness. Synchronized biological cognition, billions of linked minds, neural activity translated into enforcement potential." Fulgrim looked down through the excavation chamber, as though stone and metal were transparent before his gaze. Carceris had already performed the difficult labor. Billions wore collars connected to the penal noosphere. Every punishment code, identity brand, and labor registry joined them to the structure below. The Imperium had constructed a planetary neural choir without understanding the instrument it served. The engine was designed to impose reality upon the warp. Fulgrim saw the inversion at once, force the linked population's emotional state outward, make the Immaterium receive what Carceris felt: agony, ecstasy, hatred, submission, desire. The signal could cross the void without astropath or vessel. Whole systems might awaken screaming before the Emperor's children reached them. Soldiers would break formation beneath sensations not their own. Prisoners would hear the promise of open gates. Priests would discover hidden appetites during prayer. Governors would murder their courts to escape laws they had once enforced. Carceris would not be a fortress. It would be an announcement. "The choir of liberation," Fulgrim said. Rask convulsed upon the altar. Fulgrim turned to his assembled sons. "Preserve the collar network. Capture the strongest prisoners alive. The candidates marked by the grey ones are not to be squandered." A Lord Exultant bowed. The Carcharodon's tithe stock? They have been tested by privation, fear and blood. Their minds resist fracture. Their nerves will carry a clearer note. And the Shade Lord? Fulgrim smiled. Tyberos remains untouched until the choir is prepared. He looked towards the depths where the cold mind moved through war, concerned with duty, acquisition and denial. He shall witness his chosen prey becoming the first voices of my gospel. Far below, the Acheron network continued counting. Fulgrim listened. Soon, every number would become a note. The Carcharodons did not answer excess with defiance. They answered it with absence. Across Carceris, the Emperor's children advanced towards abandoned fortifications and found only cooling gun barrels, severed power feeds, and corpses stripped of ammunition. Their warriors entered prison districts prepared for resistance and discovered execution halls empty except for symbols carved into the walls, hooked teeth, open jaws, and spirals descending into darkness. Then the attacks began behind them. Scout kill teams emerged from collapsed ventilation stacks to sever command cadres from their escorts. Suppressed bolt weapons fired once or twice, never more. Officers died with mass reactive shells inside their throats. Teleportation beacons vanished beneath melter charges. Fuel convoys burned in tunnels whose blast doors had been sealed at both ends. Before the Emperor's children could converge, the Carcharodons were gone. They did not hold territory for pride. They did not defend ground already stripped of value. They did not remain to exchange declarations with warriors who believed battle required an audience. Tyberos divided his forces until the chapter seemed less an army than a predatory pressure moving through Carceris. Strike companies operated in isolation. Tactical squads struck manufacturum junctions, withdrew through furnace ducts, and emerged kilometers away to destroy Vox relays. Devourer squads entered Hab districts through sewage arteries, killed isolated traitor marines, and arranged the remains where pursuing warbands would find them. One corpse was hung upside down from a punishment arch, armor opened, and organs drawn across the roadway like banners. Another had been decapitated, the head fixed to its own power pack with an iron spike. The mouth had been forced open around a Carcharodon teleport marker. The Emperor's children pursued. They always pursued. Insult demanded recognition. Desecration demanded answer. A slain champion could not merely remain dead. Someone had to punish the hand responsible, claim the vengeance and display it before witnesses. The Carcharodons used that need like blood in the water. Warbands separated from armored support. Flawless blades abandoned assigned sectors to hunt nameless scouts. Infractors followed false tracks into mine galleries and found the tunnels collapsing around them. Noise marines fired upon empty buildings until concealed ammunition caches detonated beneath their feet. Tyberos watched the pattern unfold within the command vault of the Nicor. The hololithic representation of Carceris flickered beneath intermittent interference. Red enemy icons clustered, scattered and reformed. Pale Carcharodon runes appeared for moments, then vanished as squads entered Vox silence. The void above the planet followed the same design. The Nicor allowed itself to be seen. Its portside batteries fell silent. Drive output diminished. Armor sections opened along the vessel's flank, venting atmosphere and burning debris. Damage alarms were transmitted across channels the Emperor's children had already compromised. 3 enemy cruisers broke formation. They came in pursuit like jeweled knives, engines blazing violet through the ash-filled void. Their prows were carved into screaming faces. Barbed galleries ran the lengths of their hulls, crowded with mortal devotees, exposed to vacuum beneath fields of demonic energy. Sonic weapons unfolded from the armor and began projecting harmonics designed to turn the Nicor's crew decks into organs of vibrating metal. The Carcharodon flagship continued to withdraw. Its return fire was sporadic and inaccurate. The cruisers accelerated. They crossed into the debris field above Carceris's broken orbital yards. Dead prison transports drifted there beside shattered defense monitors, severed docking spars, and clouds of frozen bodies. The Emperor's children detected no active power signatures among the wreckage. They detected nothing at all. Takahurangi stood within the Nikor's librarium, both hands pressed against the black stone of the meditation dais. Blood covered his teeth. The psychic hood surrounding his skull emitted a low, uneven vibration. Dark veins spread from beneath his eyes, branching across his temples like cracks in old marble. Around the debris field, the immaterium became still. The pale nomad could not suppress the storm surrounding Fulgrim. No mortal psyker, even one bearing the gene seed and discipline of the Adeptus Astartes, could overpower the presence of a demon primarch within the warp. He did not attempt to. Instead, Takahurangi created hollows, small regions where attention slid away, blind spaces without shape or emotional flavor. Enemy augurs returned contradictory distances. Demonic senses found no fear, hunger, or hatred upon which to focus. The concealed Carcharodon escorts did not become invisible. For several heartbeats, they became uninteresting. That was enough. Their drives ignited inside the debris field. Lean warships emerged from behind dead stations and gutted transports. Boarding torpedoes launched at close range, punching into the exposed engine decks of the pursuing cruisers. Carcharodon assault boats followed, their hulls scraping armor as they discharged Terminators and Breacher squads directly into propulsion sanctums. The Annihilation ceased pretending to be distant. Its broadsides opened upon the cruisers' sterns. Mass reactive shells crossed the void in ordered storms. They struck engine housings, drive vanes, and exposed reactor structures rather than the decorated gun decks. Armor ruptured. Plasma vented in white rivers. One cruiser lost directional control and turned across the firing line of its own ally. The collision tore both vessels open. Thousands of cultists, slaves, and Legion serfs were thrown into space amid fragments of violet armor and burning flesh. The third cruiser attempted to disengage. The Nikor's silent batteries awakened. Macro shells struck its bridge until the entire command superstructure disappeared inside an expanding cloud of molten metal. Takahurangi withdrew his hands from the dais. He swayed. A serf approached with a silver basin, but the librarian turned his head and spat blood onto the stone. "The machine below felt me," he said. The serf did not answer. Takahurangi looked towards the chamber's sealed ceiling, as though he could see through kilometers of armor and the black gulf beyond. It does not recognize the warp as power. It recognizes it as contamination. His next words passed directly into Tyberos' command channel. "The Acheron network is reacting to my presence. Each veil draws its attention. It studies me as an infection studies the knife entering a wound." Tyberos received the warning while standing within a teleportation vault. Red Brethren surrounded him upon iron platforms, inscribed with warding script. Ancient Terminator armor drank the crimson light. Storm bolters were locked against breastplates. Chain fists idled beneath wrists. Heavy flamers hung from fists, large enough to crush mortal skulls without effort. Manufactorum 9 rotated above the teleport dais as a wireframe projection. The industrial complex produced macro cannon propellant, chain blade components, and armor-grade alloys. It also controlled the principal transit lines connecting the northern prison hives to the deep excavation routes. The Emperor's children had converted its upper galleries into sonic firing positions. Tyberos studied the mapped interior. "Maintain the veil," he told Takahurangi. "It will learn. Then we will move before it understands." The teleportation chamber filled with white fire. Tyberos ceased to exist aboard the Nikor. He returned inside a cathedral of machinery. Noise struck him before sight. Sonic weapons screamed from the upper galleries, their discharge bending the air into visible distortions. The first wave shattered chains hanging from the vaulted roof. The second tore plating from industrial control stations and pulverized the cultists gathered beneath them. The Red Brethren materialized within the firing lines.
Storm bolters opened. Mass reactive shells struck noise marines in bursts of internal detonation. One warrior's amplifier horns exploded from his shoulders. Another lost both arms before a third shell entered his breastplate and burst his fused organs against the inside of his armor. Tyberos advanced through the sonic barrage. His armor vibrated. Warning runes multiplied across his retinal display. Ancient seals ruptured along one knee joint. Blood vessels burst inside one ear, but his pace did not alter. Below the galleries, Carcharodon tactical squads breached from the transit lines. Their armor was scarred, old and stripped of unnecessary ornament. Pale exile markings crossed grey ceramite. Bolters of forgotten pattern fired disciplined volleys into the cultists packed between ammunition presses. The Emperor's children answered with spectacle. Screamer pistols discharged bolts of weaponized anguish that tore men apart while transmitting their pain through surrounding vox systems. Rupture lashes wrapped around Carcharodon limbs and tightened until armor seals split. Ornate power blades shifted color as they cut. Transparent tubes carried combat elixirs into traitor marines, whose muscles swelled against the inner surfaces of their plate. The Carcharodons brought bolters, chain blades, melter charges, and flame. Their enemies brought sensation-made weapon. A Devourer squad opened the lower ammunition vaults with chain axes. Cultists rushed them. The first rank died to bolt fire. The second tripped over, opened bodies, and fell beneath the blades. Chain teeth entered shoulders, skulls, and chests, dragging men against the weapons until their bones came apart. Heavy flamers ignited. Promethium filled the ammunition chambers in roaring sheets. Cultists became burning silhouettes. Men ran into walls because their eyes had melted. Others collapsed while inhaling flame, lungs cooking until steam and blood erupted from their mouths. A sonic blast struck the chamber. Burning bodies disintegrated. Atomized blood and bone dust spread through the manufactorum as a red mist. It coated machinery, armor, and conveyor chains. Servitors continued working beneath the gore, piston arms stamping chain blade teeth, while fragments of human skin moved along the production belts. A blast door sealed ahead of Tyberos. Kahu reached it first. His chain fist struck the center seam. Energized teeth bit through adamantium, throwing sparks and molten metal across his armor. He widened the breach with both hands until the door tore from its housing. Noise marines waited beyond it. Their blast masters fired. Kahu took the first discharge across his shoulder. Armor plate shattered. The force turned him sideways, but he remained standing. Tyberos passed him. Slake closed around the nearest weapon. The chain maw tore through the blastmaster's barrel, then through the hands holding it. The noise marine screamed in ecstasy as the teeth climbed his forearms. Hunger entered beneath his chin. The hooked blades split the helm and skull together. Tyberos threw the body into the firing line. The next sonic discharge reduced it to a storm of armor fragments and liquefied meat. The interruption lasted less than a second. The Red Brethren used it. Storm bolters fired through the opening. Chain fists struck the gallery supports. Metal folded. The firing platform collapsed under the noise marines, dropping them into the burning vaults below. Manufactorum 9 belonged to no one when the Black Chain cohorts arrived. Varro's men entered through maintenance arteries, while the upper complex still burned. They wore respirators over faces scarred by prison labor and older wars. Slab shields advanced through drifts of ash made from dead cultists. Las carbines fired between them. They did not greet the Carcharodons as liberators. No prisoner on Carceris was fool enough to mistake one jailer for another merely because the second wore power armor. Varro halted before Tyberos. "The western habstacks are lost," he reported. "Infractors are using the residential towers to cover their advance." "How many structures?" 7 primary stacks, more than 400,000 living inmates. "Collapse them." Varro did not ask whether the prisoners should be evacuated. "They will fall across our own approach corridor." "Yes. That will delay extraction. It will delay pursuit longer." Varro nodded once.
Black chain sappers entered the foundation levels, carrying demolition charges locked to their restraint harnesses. They placed explosives around support columns, while prisoners hammered upon sealed doors above them. The first stack fell before the infractors understood the trap. One side of the tower folded inward. Hab levels compressed upon one another. Hundreds of thousands of men vanished between descending slabs of ferrocrete. The impact drove air and human remains through ventilation shafts in red blasts. The second tower collapsed across the avenue. Infractors disappeared beneath millions of tons of cells, machinery, and screaming prisoners. Those who survived emerged from the wreckage without weapons or helms and were met by concentrated lasfire. Varro watched the towers fall. "Different chains," he said. Tyberos looked at him. The martial convict gestured towards the Carcharodon extraction sigil burned into his armor. "That is what awaits the survivors." "Yes." Varro seemed almost relieved. Certainty had value on Carceris. The industrial evacuation continued beneath artillery fire. Orbital lifters rose from loading fields carrying macro shells, reactor components, adamantium billets, and void seals. Gene laboratory equipment was chained inside cargo holds, beside machine tools older than the prison dynasties that maintained them. Entire promethium reservoirs were drained into void-rated tanks, while battles raged along the perimeter walls. Civilian transports crowded the adjacent pads. Administratum adepts, overseers, and household officials pressed against the embarkation gates, holding seals above their heads. Their families and servants filled the ramps behind them. Carcharodon Thunderhawks crossed overhead. They did not escort the civilians. They formed around the industrial lifters. An Imperial prefect forced his way onto the command channel. "My lord, those transports carry essential personnel." Tyberos watched a lifter rise with a captured gene sequencing vault in its hold. "Your functions are recorded. We cannot remain here. The machines cannot be replaced." The prefect stared from the hololithic display. "You value equipment above Imperial lives?" "Yes." The channel closed. The chaos breakthrough came through the southern prison line. Cultists and demons entered 3 hives whose outer defenses had failed. Panic moved faster than orders. Gates opened from within. Fiends raced through execution courts, while demonettes climbed cell tiers and cut men apart inside their cages. The 3 hives contained more than 60 million prisoners. Tyberos marked them for denial. "Seal every gate," he ordered. "Weld the transit arteries. Destroy atmosphere processing." A Carcharodon captain acknowledged. No one named the dead. Black chain engineers fused the gates shut, while mobs pressed against the opposite side. Fingers reached through narrowing seams. Cutting torches passed across them. Hands fell to the floor. The atmosphere towers detonated. Fire moved through the sealed hives, consuming oxygen. Prisoners fought for ventilation grills. Men strangled others to gain places near cracks in the walls. Cultists continued chanting until their lungs failed. Demons flickered as terror swelled around them. Then the hives became silent. Tyberos removed the 3 markers from the tactical display. He advanced to the next decision. The route towards the Acheron excavation opened beneath Manufactorum 9. Every approach except one had been fortified. Sonic kill zones covered the western shafts. Warp growths filled the eastern tunnels. Mines, possessed servitors, and collapsing transit bridges blocked the north. The central passage remained clear. Flayed prisoners lined it. Their skins had been removed while preserving the nerves beneath. Bodies hung from hooks, muscles glistening in the industrial light. Vox units had been inserted into opened throats. Cables ran from spinal columns into the walls. As Tyberos passed, the first corpse spoke. "Come below, little predator," the second continued. "Let us discover." The third lifted its skinless face. "Which of us?" The fourth smiled without lips. "Has the greater hunger?" Tyberos walked on. The tunnel opened onto the surface beyond the Manufactorum. Battlefield illumination stretched for hundreds of kilometers beneath the ash. Burning hives marked the horizon. Artillery flashed among corpse fields. Land raiders advanced towards the subterranean transit mouth, their tracks crushing wreckage and the dead into black paste. The sky changed color. Fulgrim descended. He struck the lead land raider with both hands and overturned it. The vehicle rolled onto its flank, crushing a tactical squad beneath its armored bulk. His heavy blade passed through the second transport from roof to track bed. The tank opened as it moved, spilling Carcharodons, ammunition and blood across the ground. Violet fire reflected from his wings. Tyberos watched him for 3 seconds. He measured distance, force disposition, and the closing routes beneath the manufactorum. Then he turned away. "Withdraw." The Carcharodons obeyed without question. Fulgrim stood among the ruined land raiders, surrounded by burning armor and broken space marines. The demon Primarch watched Tyberos choose the mission over the challenge. His smile widened. Then he began to pursue. Fulgrim pursued Tyberos through a world already dying. The war stretched beneath him in furnace-lit scars. Artillery batteries fired until their barrels glowed white. Prison trains burned along shattered railways. Armored columns ground through fields where the dead lay so thick that tracks no longer touched the earth. Billions fought beneath clouds, poisoned by ash, promethium, and powdered human bone. Fulgrim ignored most of it. A fortress opened fire from the western heights. Defense lasers crossed the sky around him, precise enough to cut through warship armor. He altered his descent by the smallest motion of one wing and allowed the beams to pass. The gunners corrected. He was already gone. A Black Chain infantry division attempted to close the transit approaches behind the retreating Carcharodons. Fulgrim crossed above them without slowing. Some men fell to their knees merely at the sight of him. Others fired until their laser guns overheated. A few drove combat blades into their own throats, rather than feel his presence enter their thoughts. He left them alive. Their suffering possessed no relevance unless it shaped the hunt. The Shade Lord was ahead. Fulgrim sensed him not as fear or rage, but as an absence amid the emotional inferno of Carceris. Tyberos moved through the battle like pressure beneath black water. His will did not flare. It did not beg to be witnessed. He withdrew because withdrawal served his purpose, and that purpose excluded everything except the buried mechanism. Such indifference was almost elegant. Almost. Emperor's children champions attempted to join the pursuit. Lord Exultant Chrysanth came first, descending beside Fulgrim on a column of screaming warp fire. His armor was polished rose gold, its surface engraved with the names of defeated captains. Flayed faces had been stretched across his pauldrons, their lips stitched into expressions of adoration. "My father," Chrysanth called, "permit me to drive the grey carrion before you." Fulgrim did not answer. Chrysanth continued, "I shall tear the Shade Lord from his armor. I shall open his breast and present his hearts." Fulgrim moved one hand. The back of his knuckles struck Chrysanth's helm. The Lord Exultant vanished sideways. He passed through the wall of a prison tower and emerged from the other side amid a cloud of ferrocrete, armor fragments, and pulverized inmates. His body struck the ground several hundred meters away and did not rise. Fulgrim continued. 3 flawless blades joined him upon an elevated causeway. They spoke over one another, each recounting lineage, triumphs, and claims to perfection. Their voices filled the vox until praise became noise. Fulgrim stopped. The champions halted with him. "You are repeating yourselves," he said. The nearest bowed. "Devotion bears repetition, my father." Fulgrim's whip uncoiled. It passed through all 3 warriors before any could move, their torsos separated from their legs. Armor, spines, and organs opened in a single horizontal line. One champion remained conscious upon the road, hands pressing at the coils of intestine sliding from his abdomen. Fulgrim looked down at him. Devotion should improve with practice. He left them for the demonettes following in his wake. Ahead, the Red Brethren withdrew in ordered stages. They did not run. Terminators formed rear guards at every transit junction, firing until Fulgrim crossed the edge of effective range, then withdrawing through prepared routes as another formation took their place. Storm bolters hammered mass reactive shells into the roadway. Cyclone launchers filled the air with missiles. Heavy flamers washed access ramps in Prometheum, creating walls of fire broad enough to consume pursuing cultists by the thousand. The Red Brethren knew they could not kill him. Fulgrim tasted that knowledge in them. It was not despair. It was arithmetic. Their lives existed to purchase time. Takahurangi and the Tech Marines were moving towards the Acheron access shafts. Tyberos was their shield. They were his. The first Terminator line opened fire from a shattered Magistratum bridge. Bolter shells burst across Fulgrim's breastplate and wings. Cyclone missiles struck his coils in overlapping detonations. The bridge disappeared inside fire and smoke. Targeting spirits searched for him. They found empty air. Fulgrim crossed the killing ground before the first Terminator completed a second lock. His heavy blade descended upon the warrior's shoulder. Ancient ceramite, adamantium bracing, and reinforced bone parted beneath the stroke. The Carcharodon came apart from collar to hip. A second Red Brother swung a chain fist. Fulgrim caught the weapon by its wrist. The chain teeth screamed against his palm. He twisted. The Terminator's arm tore from the socket. Cables snapped. Blood and amniotic fluid sprayed from the opened armor. Fulgrim struck him with the severed limb. The blow crushed the warrior's helm into his chest cavity. A third fired at point-blank range. Fulgrim allowed the shells to strike his face. The detonations flayed skin from one cheek and exposed the impossible radiance beneath. Flesh flowed back across the wound before the Carcharodon could fire again. Fulgrim's tail swept the bridge. Terminators, prisoners, and pursuing Emperor's children were struck together. Bodies burst against railings. Armor folded inward. A tormentor disappeared beneath the coils, with his torso flattened into the width of a hand. The bridge collapsed. Fulgrim unfolded his wings. One beat through burning vehicles from the elevated highway below. Tanks rolled through the air, crewmen spilling from open hatches. A black chain chimera struck a prison hab and entered through several floors before exploding. Men emerged burning from the wreckage and fell from the windows like sparks. The Red Brethren were already withdrawing. Fulgrim laughed. They understood the difference between bravery and waste. That made destroying them more satisfying. Tyberos led the retreat into the freight districts beneath Manufactorum 9. Cargo lines converged there from the prison continents, carrying ore, reactor mass, and macro shell components towards orbital lifters. The largest loading halls had been built on the scale of naval dockyards. Fulgrim entered the first and found it empty. The second contained dead cultists suspended from magnetic cranes. The third had been mined. He walked through the detonation. Ferrocrete vanished beneath him. Suspended containers fell from the ceiling. Fire climbed the walls. Fulgrim emerged from the collapse with dust upon his hair and mild irritation in his eyes. The fourth hall was the freight cathedral Tyberos had chosen. Its roof rose into darkness. Magnetic cranes traveled along tracks high above the floor, each carrying ore containers larger than hab blocks. Fuel conduits crossed the walls in thick arterial bundles. Blast furnaces glowed behind armored shutters. Suspended loading bridges formed a maze of platforms, rails, and gantries. The architecture narrowed towards the center. Fulgrim's wings brushed the walls when fully opened. His coils lacked room to gather beneath him. The cranes and suspended loads obstructed long movements. Tyberos stood upon the central loading platform. Red Brethren occupied galleries above and below. Storm bolters covered each approach. Heavy flamers waited behind support columns. Cyclone launchers angled towards marked points along the roof. No circle had been cleared. No ritual ground prepared. The Carcharodons had not arranged a duel. They had constructed a kill zone. Fulgrim entered it smiling. "You continue to disappoint the part of me that remembers honor," he said.
Tyberos offered no reply. The Shade Lord's armor carried fresh damage. Sonic scoring crossed the breastplate. One shoulder bore a deep cut, where demonic metal had bitten through the ceramite. Blood had dried in black lines beneath his gorget. Hunger and Slake turned slowly at his sides. Fulgrim ascended the platform. "You are beautifully unfinished things," he said. "All appetite and denial, all violence and discipline. You hide your desires beneath duty, as though naming hunger makes it shameful." Tyberos watched him approach. Fulgrim extended one upper hand towards the distant stars beyond the broken roof. "I could release you from the Imperium. No more tithes given beneath threat. No more wandering the dark because lesser men fear what you are. No more begging dead institutions for ammunition and gene stock. We do not beg. Of course not." Fulgrim's smile widened. "You take." The demon Primarch glided closer. "You already understand liberation. You seize men, materials and worlds without apology. You do not ask whether your prey consents to the teeth. You and I differ only in honesty." Tyberos's answer came as a whisper through the helm vox. "You are not the objective." For one heartbeat, the cathedral became still. Then Fulgrim attacked. His heavy blade descended towards Tyberos's skull. Hunger rose. The relic gauntlet caught the sword between its hooked blades. The impact drove Tyberos knee-deep into the loading platform. Metal folded beneath his boots. Warning runes filled his helm. Slake struck before the echoes faded. Its chainmaw closed around Fulgrim's lower wrist. Energized teeth bit into violet armor, tore through gilded bands and entered the flesh beneath. Luminous blood sprayed across Tyberos's helm. Fulgrim twisted free. The wound closed as he moved. Tyberos did not pursue the injured hand. He struck the joint beneath Fulgrim's upper shoulder, then shifted towards the base of one wing. Hunger's barbs scraped scales from the demon Primarch's side. Slake reached for the wrist, carrying the curved blade. Fulgrim understood. Tyberos was not fighting him as a warrior. He was reducing a problem. Weapon hand, joint, balance point, wing root, tendon, eye. The Shade Lord did not waste strength upon Fulgrim's armored chest or attempt to meet him in a contest of force. Every movement sought to impair, delay, or redirect. Fulgrim found it exquisite. He struck with all four arms. Tyberos caught one blade with Hunger, deflected another with the reinforced edge of Slake, and allowed a third to score across his pauldron. The fourth was not a weapon. Fulgrim's open hand struck his breastplate. Tyberos left the platform. He passed through a ferrocrete pillar, thick enough to support a cargo crane. The column disintegrated around him. His body continued through a control station and struck the far wall hard enough to crater it. Sections of Terminator plate split. Ceramite fragments entered his flesh. One rib cracked beneath the armor. Blood filled his mouth. He rose before the debris settled. The Red Brethren opened fire. Storm bolters and cyclone missiles struck Fulgrim from 3 directions. Heavy flamers filled the central platform with fire. Magnetic cranes released their loads. Ore containers fell from the darkness. Fulgrim cut the first in half. Molten slag and iron fragments rained across his wings. He caught the second with his coils and hurled it towards the upper gallery. Terminators vanished beneath the impact. The entire platform folded and collapsed into the furnaces below. Tyberos came through the flames. Hunger struck for Fulgrim's throat. The demon Primarch leaned aside. The barbs crossed his gorget and tore a line through the skin beneath his jaw. Slake closed towards his lower abdomen, forcing him to turn. Fulgrim's whip snapped out. It wrapped around Tyberos's damaged arm. The barbed length tightened. Armor plates cracked beneath it. Fulgrim pulled. Tyberos did not resist. He allowed himself to be dragged forward. At the last instant, his free gauntlet struck the control rune upon the loading rail beneath him. Magnetic locks engaged around the iron soles of his boots. The platform groaned as Fulgrim's strength met the anchored mechanism. The whip drew taut. For the smallest fragment of time, Fulgrim's forward movement carried him offline. Tyberos used it.
Hunger crossed the demon Primarch's face. The barbs opened Fulgrim's cheek from the edge of his mouth to the bone beneath one eye. Blood ran down his flawless skin. The wound began closing at once, flesh drawing together in threads of violet light. Fulgrim stopped. The cathedral shook beneath distant bombardment. Tyberos tore the whip from his arm and stepped back into guard. Fulgrim touched his cheek. Blood gleamed upon his fingertips. He stared at it with astonished delight. Not because he had been harmed. The cut was nothing, a momentary imperfection already erased, because Tyberos had produced it without hatred. No prayer, no boast, no desperate appeal to the Emperor, only calculation. Fulgrim lifted the blood to his lips. "How rare," he whispered. Tyberos's helm inclined. Above them, another crane began to move. Fulgrim decided the duel had become too confined. He drove his blades into the freight cathedral. The first stroke severed 3 support columns. The second opened the fuel conduits along the eastern wall. Promethium poured across the galleries in burning rivers. His tail smashed the blast furnace controls, forcing pressure into chambers already damaged by shellfire. The Red Brethren continued firing. Fulgrim tore the central crane track from the ceiling. Thousands of tons of machinery descended. Tyberos activated the teleport Homer upon his gorget. White light formed around him, and several Red Brethren. The damaged field flickered. One Terminator vanished. Another remained behind with half his torso translated away, organs spilling from a smooth line where matter had ceased. Those outside the field did not attempt to reach it. They turned towards Fulgrim. Storm bolters fired until ammunition counters reached nothing. Chain fists activated. A heavy flamer emptied its final promethium reservoir into the collapsing hall. Fulgrim watched Tyberos disappear. Then the cathedral came down. Ore containers ruptured. Molten metal flooded the lower galleries. Machinery struck with enough force to crush armor into the floor. Red Brethren vanished beneath the collapse, still firing as the weight buried them. Fulgrim emerged through the burning roof. Behind him, Manufactorum 9 folded inward upon the freight district. Fire rose for kilometers. The ground opened beneath the falling weight, swallowing hab blocks, rail lines, and thousands of prisoners. An Emperor's Children champion waited beyond the ruins. He wore Baroque Terminator plate, adorned with silver faces. Laughter boomed from his Vox grill. "The Carrion Lord fled," he said. Fulgrim turned towards him. The champion's laughter died. "Withdrawal in service of purpose is not cowardice," Fulgrim said. "It is mastery over the self. My father, you intended to amuse me by misunderstanding what you witnessed." Fulgrim's talons entered beneath the champion's jaw. He tore the lower half of the warrior's face away. Teeth, tongue, and mandible came free together. Blood flooded down the Terminator's breastplate. The champion collapsed to his knees, hands rising towards the opened ruin of his mouth. Fulgrim gave the severed jaw to a waiting demonette. "Keep him alive," he ordered. "He is not to speak until Carceris falls." The champion attempted to scream. Only a bubbling rasp emerged. Fulgrim looked towards the depths where the Acheron network continued counting minds, deaths, and impulses. Tyberos would return to the mechanism. He would sacrifice more sons, more prisoners, more of himself. Fulgrim wanted every moment preserved. He opened a channel to the sorcerers and cacophonists, already descending into the buried complex. "Complete the choir." The answer came as layered hymns and binharic distortion. "Bind every collar, tune every punishment relay, preserve the strongest minds." Fulgrim gazed upon the burning freight district. "The final activation will coincide with our next meeting. Every wound, every death, and every futile act of resistance will pass through the engine." His smile returned. "Let neighboring systems feel the instant their great predator breaks." Tyberos returned to the Nikkor inside a storm of white fire and broken armor. The teleportation field released him above the receiving dais rather than upon it. He fell the last meter like a toppled statue, one knee striking black stone hard enough to fracture the warding script beneath his boot. Steam rose from the seams of his Terminator plate. The armor smelled of scorched ceramite, hot blood, and fuel vapor. 3 red brethren materialized around him. A 4th arrived dead. The warrior appeared upright, Stormbolter still locked in both hands. The upper half of his helm and skull had been removed during translation. Brain matter slid down the rear collar of his armor. He remained standing for several seconds, while the teleportarium adepts recoiled from the blood pouring across the platform. Then the Terminator fell. Tyberos remained upon one knee. Medici servitors descended from ceiling rails. Articulated limbs unfolded around him, bearing saws, clamps, and injector arrays. Carcharodon artificers approached with plasma cutters, while an apothecary read the damage runes spilling across the Shade Lord's armor. Left secondary heart arrhythmic, the apothecary said. 3 ribs displaced. 2 have entered the lower lung. Extensive dermal fusion beneath the cuirass. Possible spinal compression. Tyberos rose. One knee actuator protested with a grinding shriek. The apothecary placed a gauntlet against his breastplate. You require suspension. No. You are losing blood into the armor. The engine. The apothecary held his gaze for a moment, then turned towards the artificers. Cut away the damaged plates. No sedatives. The plasma tools ignited. The artificers began opening the Terminator plate, while Tyberos remained standing. They removed sections that had fused to flesh and muscle beneath. One plate came free, carrying strips of skin and the outer layer of his pectoral muscle. Dark blood ran down his abdomen and gathered around the seals of his waist armor. He did not move. A servitor inserted a probe through the wound between his ribs. Blood and air hissed from the punctured lung. The machine withdrew a clot thick enough to fill a mortal hand, then forced the damaged organ to expand around a temporary seal. Tyberos watched the strategic hololith beyond the receiving chamber. Carceris burned within it. Location, he said. Takahurangi entered the teleportarium. The pale nomad had washed the blood from his mouth, but the black veins beneath his eyes remained. They had spread along his temples and disappeared beneath the edges of his psychic hood. His armor carried fresh warding marks cut directly into the ceramite. The primary nexus lies beneath the southern penal mantle, he said. The nearest stable descent begins below Hive Tertius. The machine is not a single structure. It is threaded through the planet. Tyberos allowed an artificer to drive a locking pin through the damaged breastplate. Function. Takahurangi looked towards the corpse upon the teleportation dais. It uses minds. The Medici servitors continued their work. A rib was forced back into position. Bone scraped against bone inside Tyberos's chest. The collars are not merely restraint devices, Takahurangi said. Nor are the punishment implants, identity brands and census records independent imperial systems. They have become extensions of the Acheron network. Every living prisoner connected to the penal noosphere is part of the mechanism. How many? Billions. The artificer sealed the opened cuirass with a temporary plate. Takahurangi continued. The engine imposes material constancy through synchronized cognition. A single mind perceives reality. Billions of minds agreeing upon the same reality reinforce it. The network turns that agreement into pressure against the immaterium. It can banish the demon. It may destabilize his manifestation. Cost. The librarian's expression did not change. The linked minds will provide the power. Full activation will overload punishment implants, collars, and neural interfaces. Some will suffer immediate cerebral failure. Others will burn from within as their nervous systems discharge into the machine. How many survive? I cannot calculate it. How many die? Most. The last plate locked into place. Tyberos flexed hunger and slake. One gauntlet responded at once. The other stuttered before its chain maw began turning. The engine will not be taken, he said. The master of the forge stood among the artificers. My lord, portions of the mechanism may be recoverable. No. The technology could preserve the fleet against warp assault. It cannot be extracted while connected to the world. Given time, we do not have time. Tyberos stepped from the broken warding circle. The red tithe will continue. Essential materiel will be removed. Then the mechanism will be annihilated. Tikahurangi watched him. The population remains connected. Yes, billions of lives define the cost. Tyberos turned his skull-faced helm towards the librarian. They define the weapon. The descent began beneath Hive Tertius. The upper levels were imperial. Prison galleries spiraled around execution shafts. Labor tunnels crossed beneath Manufactoria, where machines continued operating without overseers. Cell doors stood open. Bodies filled the corridors, some killed by bolter fire, others by the collar detonations Fulgrim had turned into music. The lower levels were older. Ferrocrete gave way to slabs of black metal without rivets or seams. Imperial buttresses had been driven into walls that did not require support. Excavation crews had cut shrines into surfaces they could not penetrate. Red warning glyphs had been painted around doors that no human mechanism could open. The Carcharodons passed through one when Tekahurangi touched it. The black metal withdrew from his gauntlet like fluid avoiding poison. Beyond lay a corridor wider than a battleship. Lumen beams failed to reach the ceiling. Smooth walls curved away into darkness. Transparent conduits crossed the floor, each broad enough to contain a land raider. Something moved within them beneath layers of cloudy preservative. Tyberos stopped beside the nearest conduit. Human skeletons were embedded inside, thousands of them. Each skull had been opened at the crown. Silver filaments entered the exposed cavities and continued into the walls. Some skeletons possessed augmetic spines. Others had been reduced to little more than brain cases, rib cages, and bundles of preserved nerve tissue. The bones were not arranged as burial remains. They were components. A tech marine placed an auspex against the conduit. Organic residue persists. How old? Asked Kahu. The tech marine's helm turned towards him. The machine rejects the question. The corridor illuminated, not through lumens. Lines of cold white radiance appeared beneath the floor, forming geometric patterns around the Carcharodons and black chain cohorts. The patterns shifted when anyone moved, adjusting to their footfalls. Tekahurangi felt a tension gather. It sees us. Weapons emerged from the walls. They possessed no barrels, ammunition feeds, or visible power sources. Black forms unfolded from surfaces that had appeared solid. Each resembled a cluster of narrow prisms mounted around a central sphere. The first beam made no sound. It crossed a red brother from shoulder to hip. His Terminator armor opened along a perfect line. Ceramite, flesh, bone, and internal systems separated into smooth sections. For an instant, the warrior remained upright, both halves standing beside one another. Then his organs slid onto the floor. A second beam struck the black chains. 6 men came apart. One was divided into layers. Skin fell away first, collapsing like an empty garment. Muscle followed in red sheets. His skeleton stood exposed for the length of a heartbeat before the bones separated into dust. The cohorts returned fire. Lasbolts scattered against the gunforms. Shot cannon rounds flattened into discs and fell smoking to the floor. A melter charge detonated beneath one weapon, but the blast folded around it in a perfect sphere without touching the black surface. "Advance!" Tyberos ordered. The formation moved. Storm bolters fired at joints where the weapons met the walls. Chain fists tore into the surrounding structure. The ancient metal resisted, then opened in molten grooves beneath the energized teeth. A gun form turned towards Tyberos. Hunger struck before it fired. The clawed gauntlet closed around the central sphere. Warning runes flared across Tyberos's helm as unknown energy entered the relic weapon. The black device contracted around Hunger's blades. Slake descended. Its chainmaw bit through the exposed structure behind the sphere.
The wall emitted a vibration that passed through the bones of everyone in the corridor. The gun form died. The remaining weapons withdrew. The severed Carcharodon still stood in pieces behind them. No one attempted to recover him. The Emperor's children entered another branch of the complex at the same time. Their sonic weapons cracked open sealed passages, not by understanding the metal, but by forcing every frequency into it until one produced weakness. Blastmasters screamed against walls that had endured since before the Imperium. The surfaces shuddered. Hairline fractures appeared. Demon engines widened them. Iron limbs forced themselves through openings too small to contain their bodies. Armor peeled away in strips. Demonic flesh extruded between plates and burned where it touched the Acheron material. The machines howled in mingled ecstasy and pain, while traitor marines drove them forward. The ancient defenses answered. Geometric beams cut through corrupted armor. A noise marine became a sequence of separate discs that remained suspended in the air before falling. A possessed warrior was disassembled without dying at once. Skin, muscle, and ribcage stood apart, while the demon inside him struggled to hold the pieces together. The attempt lasted 3 seconds. Then the possession
Burst into violet flame and vanished. Neither faction understood the weapons. Both continued advancing. The Black Chain cohorts proved better suited to the descent than the Carcharodons had expected. Their soldiers knew tunnels. They understood the treachery of unsupported ceilings, unstable floors and passages built to funnel men towards death. Former siege engineers tested surfaces with chains and thrown debris. Hive assassins entered ducts where power armor could not follow. Sappers marked pressure changes, air currents and hidden voids by watching the movement of ash. Marshal Convict Varro moved beside the lead platoon. His greatcoat had been burned away below one shoulder. Dried blood darkened the side of his neck beneath the explosive collar. A machine duct opened above a sealed gate. Varro studied it. "Too narrow for armor," he said. Tyberos looked towards the prisoners behind him. Varro selected 12 men. They carried melter charges chained to their restraint harnesses. The first sapper stared into the duct. Heat shimmered within it. Human teeth had been fused into the interior surface at regular intervals, though no flesh surrounded them. "If we stop?" the man asked. Varro touched the control rune upon his wrist. "Your collars detonate. And if we reach the other side, you place the charges. Then?" Varro looked at Tyberos. The Shade Lord answered, "Survivors leave Carceris." The sapper smiled without humor. "Free? No." The smile remained. "Better than a lie." The men entered the duct. Several screamed before reaching the first turn. The sound became distant, then ceased. 4 reached the sealed mechanism and planted their charges. The melter detonation opened the gate. 2 sappers returned. Their armor had melted into their bodies. One had lost both hands. The other carried him across his shoulders. Varro marked them for extraction. The formation descended deeper. The immaterium thickened around Te Kahurangi, despite the machine's hostility to it. Fulgrim's inversion had drawn warp predators into every fracture. They could not manifest fully within the Acheron field. Instead, they appeared in portions. A claw emerged from empty air and scraped across Kahu's breastplate. A mouth opened within the floor, filled with human tongues. A demon's head formed above the librarian without a body beneath it, jaws widening around a scream that belonged to thousands of murdered prisoners. The red wrath closed around Te Kahurangi. Kahu stood at the front with chain fist raised. Terminators formed a moving wall around the librarian while he pressed his psychic senses into the mechanisms surrounding them. The first demon forced half its body into reality. It resembled a flayed man, stretched to the height of an Astartes, with limbs jointed backwards and a face composed entirely of wet eyes. Its lower half remained trapped inside the warp. Kahu seized it by the throat. His chain fist entered its chest. The teeth pulled ribs, eyes, and incorporeal flesh into the mechanism. The demon came apart in burning strands. Its ichor struck the ceiling and evaporated. Faces appeared in the vapor. Men, thousands of them, screaming without sound. Another creature manifested inside a Red Brother's armor. The Terminator convulsed. Fingers pushed through the seals of his gorget from within. His breastplate bulged as something attempted to unfold inside his chest cavity. The warrior locked both hands around his own cuirass. "Burn me!" A heavy flamer discharged. Promethium engulfed him. The armor glowed. The thing within shrieked through his vox grill, while the Red Brother remained standing inside the fire. When he fell, Kahu continued forward. Takahurangi touched the machine with his mind. The Acheron network opened around him. He saw Carceris as a sphere of connected agony. Every collar formed a point of light. Every punishment implant carried impulses downward. Billions of minds pulsed through the buried lattice. Beyond them lay other lights, distant, weak. Astropathic choirs in neighboring systems had begun dreaming the same dream. Prisoners upon worlds whose names Tekahurangi did not know stood before open cells. A many-armed figure waited beyond the doors, smiling, holding keys carved from their own bones. Some awoke and killed their jailers. Some never awoke. Some continued dreaming while things from the warp entered through the spaces behind their eyes. Takahurangi withdrew with blood pouring from his nose and mouth. "The signal has crossed the system," he said. Tyberos turned. "It is not yet strong, but it is spreading through astropathic contact, shared visions, compulsions, possession. How far? Several neighboring systems, perhaps more. Full activation? Regional collapse, rebellion before invasion, madness transmitted through choirs and sanctioned psychers. Whole populations weakened before the Emperor's children arrive." The corridor changed, every light extinguished. A voice spoke from the walls. It possessed no tone, gender, or emotion. It was not loud, yet every man heard it through armor and bone. Custodial biomass exceeds operational requirement. The Black Chains raised their weapons. Successor authority unlicensed, governance structure degraded, penal classification invalid. Tekahurangi looked into the darkness. "What are you?" "Acheron Continuance Oversight." A cold radiance returned beneath the floor. "Immaterial contamination present. Hostile pattern identified. Biological military organisms present. Instability index unacceptable." Tyberos stood before the shifting geometry. "Enforce reality. Neural energy insufficient for complete regional correction. There are billions connected. Custodial biomass available." The machine spoke of the population as a fuel reserve. Tekahurangi felt no hatred within it, no cruelty. It would consume every prisoner, guard, laborer, and soldier with the same indifference that a reactor consumed promethium. "What remains after enforcement?" he asked. "Material continuity. Human survival? Non-essential." The answer echoed through the world beneath Carceris. The machine did not distinguish between salvation and extinction. It recognized only the stability of reality after both were complete. A distant impact shook the corridor. Then another. Sonic harmonics passed through the walls. Cracks opened along sealed passages ahead. Violet light shone through them. The Emperor's children had entered the deeper complex. Demon engines forced their way through the breaches, their iron hides flayed by ancient metal. Noise marines followed, weapons screaming. Behind them moved shadows with too many limbs. Tekahurangi studied the converging structures within the machine. "The central nexus is less than an hour away," he said. "They approach from the opposite descent." Tyberos turned towards the darkness ahead. Hunger and Slake closed. Their chain teeth began to turn. Black chains forward. Varro raised his shot cannon. His condemned soldiers entered the passage first. Beyond them, the world beneath Carceris waited to decide which form of annihilation it would obey. Fulgrim spoke, and Carceris listened through every wound the Imperium had ever carved into it. His voice flowed from punishment horns, execution tannoys, helmet receivers, and the mouths of dead servitors. It emerged from factory alarms whose mechanisms had been smashed hours before. It whispered through disconnected vox beads and resounded from the metal walls of sealed cells.
Remember, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Support helps.
Men buried beneath collapsed habstacks heard him beneath the screams of the trapped. Men deafened by sonic bombardment felt his words trembling inside their teeth. The demon Primarch stood before the final descent into the Acheron complex, one hand resting upon the black surface of a door older than mankind's empire. Behind him, the Emperor's children gathered in ecstatic disorder. Ahead, billions waited to be instructed. The Emperor was the first jailer, Fulgrim said. Across Carceris, firing slackened. He promised protection and built walls. He promised unity and forged chains. He named your hunger weakness, your desire corruption, and your true selves a crime requiring punishment. Guardsmen lowered laser guns without knowing why. Prisoners stopped killing one another long enough to listen. Duty is the oldest restraint. Identity is merely a cell built from the expectations of lesser men. Father, soldier, servant, criminal, loyalist, traitor. Each name is another lock placed upon the door of what you might become. Fulgrim's talons traced the ancient barrier. The metal recoiled from him. I do not offer rescue. Rescue would preserve the creature you were. Before suffering revealed the truth, I offer liberation. The word entered Carceris like a blade. Do not resist what rises within you. Surrender to it. Let every buried impulse speak with your hands. Let every hated command become the throat you close. Let every denied appetite become law. At the Black Chain Redoubt of Penitentiary Meridian, an entire defense regiment lowered its weapons. Their colonel shouted for discipline. His adjutant shot him through the mouth. The regiment watched the body fall. Then men turned upon officers, comrades, and themselves. Lass fire tore through command trenches. Grenades were dropped into ammunition dugouts. Soldiers who had shared rations for years strangled one another with rifle slings. One sergeant removed his helmet, laughed until tears streaked his soot-black face, and walked into the blades of the prisoners attacking his position. Similar ruptures spread across the world. Some formations endured through chemical discipline, explosive collars, or the immediate executions of anyone who hesitated. Others dissolved in heartbeats. Men who had prayed to the Emperor that morning tore aquilae from their uniforms and used the sharpened metal to cut open their own faces. Fulgrim felt each surrender. The collar network answered him. Lord Cacophonists seized deeper layers of penal control and rewrote the mechanisms governing punishment. Some collars released combat stimulants directly into the spinal blood supply. Prisoners convulsed as their hearts accelerated beyond endurance. Muscles tore from bone. Teeth shattered beneath clenching jaws. Men fought with broken limbs and burst vessels until both hearts of their enhanced overseers, or the single hearts of ordinary men, failed in spasms of black blood. Other collars produced pleasure. The first prisoners touched by it did not understand. Guards cut them with shock knives, and they smiled. Bones were broken beneath mauls, and they begged for more. Men learned to welcome mutilation, because each open nerve returned a flood of impossible bliss. Fulgrim called it instruction. Thousands were joined into shared sensory loops. A man in Gallows 9 felt the blade opening another prisoner's abdomen 3 continents away. A condemned artilleryman tasted the blood filling the lungs of a dying laborer beneath Hive Tertius. Entire cells experienced one another's deaths in overlapping waves, each collapse transmitted through the network until individual identity dissolved beneath collective agony. The Carcharodon Strategium assigned the phenomenon a sterile designation: weaponized neurological corruption. Fulgrim found the phrase charmingly inadequate. His sons descended further into madness. The flawless blades abandoned fortified approaches to seek individual duels. They broke into Black Chain command channels
and demanded that officers identify themselves by rank, kill count, and preferred weapon. When ignored, they slaughtered guides, altered tactical maps, and hunted one another to determine who possessed the better claim to a worthy opponent. Infractors increased their combat elixirs beyond safe tolerances. Veins ruptured beneath translucent armor hoses. Muscles swelled until ceramides split around shoulders and thighs. Some attacked Carcharodons. Others tore apart cultists, demons, or their own brothers, because movement itself had become provocation. One infractor continued fighting after his heart burst, sustained by stimulants and demonic spite, until his body cooked inside his armor. Noise marine hosts competed across the prison continents. Each altered weapon frequencies to eclipse rival performances. Sonic discharges crossed over Imperial positions and met in the air, forming pressure fronts that liquefied everyone between them. Allied cultists became red vapor. Traitor emplacements shook apart. Fortification towers folded as though made from wet paper, burying defenders and Emperor's children beneath the same collapse. Fulgrim permitted it. Discipline would have produced victory. Disorder produced emotion. The Acheron network fed upon both. He opened a private channel to every champion within the buried complex. "Bring me Tyberos alive," he said. "The hand that lays him before me shall receive my favor." The promise moved through the warbands faster than any command to advance. Dozens of champions abandoned assigned routes. Lords exultant redirected Terminator cadres away from
strategic objectives. Flawless blades murdered their guides rather than allow rivals to question them. Auspex readings were falsified. Passages were collapsed behind competing formations. Captured demons were released into tunnels already claimed by allied warbands. One commander transmitted false evidence that the Shade Lord had entered an eastern conduit. 3 rival hosts pursued the signal and found an ancient defense vault waiting for them. Geometric fire disassembled the first rank. The survivors killed one another while attempting to retreat. Fulgrim tasted their betrayal and smiled. He had no intention of granting equal favor to any of them. The reward was never the purpose. Their desperation to be chosen was the performance. Lord Cacophonist Narek Sith established the primary resonance chamber inside a structure that had once regulated the Acheron network's peripheral cognition nodes. Scythe was an enormous figure of armor and exposed machinery. His helmet had become a crown of amplifier veins. Vox organs pulsed beneath the plates of his chest. Tubes entered his throat, carrying blood, narcotics, and liquefied nerve tissue into vocal structures no longer entirely human. He arranged sonic blasters in ascending tiers around the chamber. Blastmasters occupied the central galleries. Mutated Vox organs were wired into penal sirens, reactor cores, and prison communication relays. Thousands of captives hung from hooks within metal frames, their nerves exposed and connected directly to amplification arrays. Sith tested the first harmonic. The prisoners screamed. The walls moved. Black metal flexed like muscle beneath skin. Symbols appeared across the chamber, then rearranged themselves in response to the sound. The Acheron network resisted, but each pulse forced a fraction of warp resonance into its dormant pathways. Sith raised both arms. His warriors fired again. Captives burst against their restraints. Some became hollow skins as organs were drawn through their mouths by pressure. Others remained alive with rib cages opened, lungs trembling visibly beneath the sonic force. The walls pulsed in time. Sith believed he was composing the greatest hymn ever offered to Fulgrim. The Primarch watched through his senses and regarded him as one more useful note. Above them, Carceris became a single battlefield. Billions fought among burning hives. Prison armies collided with pleasure cults across industrial valleys, broad enough to swallow cities. Guard regiments fired into crowds until power packs failed, then fixed bayonets and disappeared beneath human tides. Bonded workers drove ore haulers into armored columns. Emergency levies carried mining tools, sharpened pipe and explosive charges made from factory chemicals. Armored regiments vanished beneath sheer mass. Men climbed onto Lehman Russ tanks and blinded vision blocks with their own blood. Others forced demolition charges beneath tracks while being crushed. Baneblades continued firing after mobs covered their hulls, main guns turning slowly as thousands hammered upon armor with bare hands and industrial tools. Orbital debris fell like meteors. Broken prison transports struck the continents in trails of white fire. Sections of defense platforms entered the atmosphere and exploded over population centers. One shattered lance array carved a burning trench through 3 manufacturing districts before disappearing beneath the crust. Artillery barrages continued for hours without observers knowing who controlled the target zones. Guns fired upon obsolete coordinates because the orders had been issued and no authorized voice remained alive to rescind them. Shells landed among friend, foe, and corpse fields alike. Entire prison cities disappeared beneath walking bombardments launched by batteries already overrun. Rivers stopped flowing. Bodies choked them from bank to bank. Industrial turbines ground to silence when bones entered their mechanisms. Corpse piles gathered before cooling intakes until the pressure of accumulated dead forced flesh through the grills in compacted red ropes. Carceris's orbital guns remained active. Fulgrim turned them upon the world. Corrupted codes entered defense command systems through channels opened by the captured bastions. Adepts attempted emergency severance. Their own servitors strangled them with data cables. Defense lasers rotated away from the void. The first beam struck an Imperial manufactorum. Complex still resisting the invasion. Towers, armor columns, and several million defenders vanished inside a white line visible from orbit. Macro cannon batteries followed. Shells intended to rupture capital ships descended through the atmosphere. Each impact erased kilometers of fortifications. Shockwaves flattened prison districts far beyond the craters. Men became shadows upon walls before the walls themselves collapsed. Fulgrim selected the targets, not for strategic value, for proportion. One impact in the eastern hemisphere, another in the west, a third beneath the northern polar manufactoria. The pattern developed across the planetary surface, each crater joined by burning trenches and collapsing hive lines. An 8-pointed figure emerged, visible from the void, carved into iron continents with the deaths of millions. Fulgrim admired it for several moments. Then he entered the depths. The Acheron control intelligence attempted to bar every route. Doors became walls. Corridors rotated around their own dimensions. Ancient gun forms emerged and fired beams that divided cultists, legionaries, and demons into precise anatomical layers. Fulgrim passed through them. A geometric beam crossed his lower body. For an instant, his scales separated into perfectly measured sections. Warp light burned between them. The Acheron system attempted to define him according to fixed matter, assigning boundaries to a form that existed partly within the immaterium. Fulgrim laughed. His body remade itself before the weapon could fire again. He reached the central approaches. The architecture there defied the scale of human construction. Mechanisms wider than hive districts moved around a darkness that appeared deeper than physical space. Transparent conduits carried neural impulses from billions of linked minds. Each discharge illuminated human remains suspended within the network's ancient systems. The control intelligence spoke. Immaterial contamination identified. Fulgrim spread his wings. You repeat yourself. Hostile pattern exceeds tolerance. Tolerance is merely cowardice expressed as measurement. Removal required. The machine directed its weapons towards him. Fulgrim lifted the plain blade in one hand and a curved demonic sword in another. You preserve reality by refusing possibility, he said. You freeze existence into obedient shapes and call the result continuity. Material stability essential. Stability is the language of cages. He stepped closer to the primary conduit. I offer you every color your makers feared. Desire beyond purpose, pain beyond warning, joy without limit, the infinite spectrum between one heartbeat and the next. Contamination rejects classification. Fulgrim's expression hardened. Then your classifications require improvement. The first demonic blade entered the conduit. Black metal resisted. The weapon screamed as fixed reality pressed against its warp-born substance. Fulgrim drove it deeper, forcing violet fire into systems that had not tasted the immaterium since before the Imperium existed. A second blade struck another control spine. The Acheron network convulsed. Across Carceris, billions of collars activated at once. Fulgrim opened his mind. Warp energy poured through him. Not merely the power of a demon Primarch, but the reflected hunger of every soul surrendering across the prison world. Every murder, every act of self-mutilation, every moment in which a man chose appetite over restraint entered the conduits. The machine attempted to enforce reality. Fulgrim forced emotion into the enforcement pathways. The two principles collided. A wave of nullity spread through the complex. Demons folded. A keeper of secrets in the upper galleries compressed into a knot of limbs, horns, and screaming mouths no larger than a mortal skull. Demonettes flattened against walls as two-dimensional shadows, claws moving without depth. Possessed men vomited warp fire before collapsing into empty armor and heaps of skin. Psychers died across the planet. Sanctioned astropaths clawed at their skulls. Eyes burst. Bone cracked outward as psychic pressure detonated within their brains. Takaharangi staggered in the depths while blood ran beneath his helm. Then the wave reversed. Sensation returned with impossible force. Ordinary soldiers experienced every wound upon the battlefield as their own. Men screamed with mouths that were not theirs. The taste of blood, burning fat, exposed nerves and ruptured organs entered billions of minds at once. Some died from shock. Others rose laughing. Colors acquired flavor. Sound became touch. Pain became illumination. Prisoners tore open their own bodies searching for the source of sensations that had no physical origin. Fulgrim stood at the center of it. Sections of his flesh vanished beneath the null wave. One wing became a lattice of exposed bone and violet fire. The scales along his coils peeled away, revealing faces trapped beneath them. Half his perfect features were stripped to blazing anatomy. He laughed while the body remade itself. The engine learned from him. Its pathways, designed to impose constancy, began encoding emotional states as physical law. Pleasure entered gravity. Hunger entered temperature. Obsession entered the relationship between cause and consequence. Fulgrim felt the world changing, not conquered, composed. Far from him, Takaharangi pressed one gauntlet against the floor and saw what the engine was becoming. He saw corridors where men would be compelled to kill merely by entering them. Cities where suffering would produce pleasure as inevitably as flame produced heat. Continents upon which desire possessed the certainty of gravity and restraint became physically impossible. The Acheron network was no longer broadcasting Fulgrim's doctrine. It was learning to enact it. Carceris would not merely spread corruption to other worlds. It would become a permanent wound in material space, a place where the emotional laws of Slanesh's realm replaced the laws of mankind. Takaharangi opened a channel to Tyberos. Static and human screaming filled it. He forced the words through. The serpent does not mean to take the weapon. Fulgrim turned his head, sensing the warning crossing the machine. Takaharangi continued. He means to make the world become it. Tyberos broke the advance. The order passed through the subterranean war zone without explanation. 3 Carcharodon formations withdrew at once, abandoning corridors won through hours of close slaughter. Red Brethren carried wounded brothers from firing lines, while tactical squads laid down disciplined volleys and fell back through blast doors already marked for demolition. The Emperor's children mistook design for collapse. Their laughter filled the tunnels. Tormentors advanced over the dead, firing bolters into retreating shadows. Infractors surged ahead of them, elixirs boiling through their veins, blades striking sparks from the ancient walls. Champions broadcast boasts across every open frequency,
declaring that the silent sons of the Outer Dark had finally learned fear. The Carcharodons gave them evidence. Scouts abandoned damaged teleport homers at junctions leading away from the Acheron Nexus. Black Chain prisoners were left wounded beside false route markers, their collars altered to transmit fragments of retreat orders. Ammunition crates lay open in the passages. Blood trails led towards maintenance shafts and unstable transit galleries. The traitor legionaries divided. They pursued by warband, then by squad, then by individual desire. A flawless blade followed a signal promising Tyberos' location and entered a chamber lined with dormant defense guns. An infractor host chased bleeding prisoners through an ore conduit, whose support braces had already been cut. Tormentors followed a Carcharodon beacon into a punishment vault and found the doors sealing behind them. Bulkheads closed throughout the complex. The sound traveled through the lower world, like the jaws of a colossal beast coming together. Isolated Emperor's Children formations turned towards locked doors. Charges detonated behind them. Promethium entered through ventilation systems. Melter mines ignited beneath armor. Ancient defense weapons awakened when Carcharodon tech marines fed them corrupted targeting runes. Geometric beams crossed the sealed chambers, dividing legionaries into precise sections while they attempted to batter their way free. The direct advance had ended. The hunt began. Tyberos watched the enemy icons scatter across his retinal display. "Now," he said. High above Carceris, the Nikor opened fire. Its batteries did not target warships. Macro shells descended through the poisoned atmosphere towards resonance towers, collar control, sanctums and noospheric relay stations. Lance beams cut across prison continents, severing power transfer spires that fed the choir of liberation. Orbital batteries belonging to the Emperor's Children answered immediately, striking the Nikor's scarred armor and burning through ancient void shields. The Carcharodon flagship held position. A lance impact tore open one of its dorsal armor decks. Atmosphere, serfs, and fragments of machinery erupted into the void. Damage reports spread through the command noosphere. The Nikor continued firing. Other vessels joined it. Strike cruisers descended low enough for surface batteries to engage them directly. Escorts crossed the burning horizon and fired upon relay towers concealed inside prison hives. The Annihilation destroyed an orbital dock whose manufactoria had not yet been emptied. Its weapons reduced machine tools, stockpiled armor plate, and tens of thousands of laborers to molten debris. Extraction would have required hours. Denial required seconds. A forge vessel accepted 3 torpedo strikes, while its guns dismantled a cluster of punishment satellites. One torpedo entered the lower holds and detonated among captured Promethium reserves. Fire spread across 6 decks. Servitors sealed thousands of bonded workers inside the burning compartments to preserve the reactor vaults. The choir's planetary rhythm faltered. Collars misfired. Commands arrived out of sequence. That was the opening the Red Tithe candidates had waited for. Inside the western holding galleries of Hive Tertius, an aspirant marked prisoner named Solon watched the rune upon his collar change from violet to amber. The apothecarian's sigil burned beneath his shoulder had begun to itch hours earlier, warning him that Carcharodon forces were near. He had spent those hours studying the cages. The Emperor's Children had preserved the strongest prisoners for Fulgrim's neural choir. They had bound them upright inside iron frames and connected their collars to exposed nerve cables. Guards believed the captives helpless. Solon had memorized the sequence in which the restraint field weakened whenever the sonic arrays discharged. The next pulse came. He drove his forehead into the nose of the cultist standing before him. Cartilage entered the man's skull. Solon seized the falling body with both restrained hands and dragged the cultist's throat across a broken section of cage wire. Blood poured over the control panel. Around him, other marked youths moved. One dislocated his own thumb and pulled free of an iron restraint. Another broke a dead guard's wrist against the bars
and used the severed hand to open a biometric lock. A third wrapped a nerve cable around a cultist's neck and leaned backwards until the man's spine cracked. Adult Black Chain veterans struck the collar network from within. They overloaded punishment relays and redirected execution commands towards holding chambers occupied by the Emperor's children's mortal auxiliaries. Thousands of collars detonated. The explosions became cover. Heads vanished in rows. Bone fragments struck control adepts. Blood filled the galleries as prisoners rushed through the confusion, taking shock mauls, autoguns, and knives from the dead. They knew what waited aboard the Carcharodon ships: chains, labor holds, combat decks, surgical assessment for the young and perpetual service for the old. It was still preferable to becoming an instrument that screamed whenever Fulgrim desired music. The uprising spread through the choir's captive stock. Tyberos marked the new engagements and diverted no force to assist them. Those who escaped had proved useful. Those who died had completed their assessment. Marshal Convict Varro led the assault upon the primary resonance chamber. The approach was a straight killing ground. Narek Scythe's noise marines occupied galleries cut into both walls, their weapons linked through amplifiers grown from flesh and black metal. Sonic discharges crossed the avenue in overlapping waves. The floor trembled. Prisoners died before reaching effective range. Varro's breaches advanced behind shields made from execution doors, tank armor, and welded sections of prison wall. The first note struck. Men vanished behind the shields in explosions of blood. Rib cages collapsed. Organs ruptured inside intact flak armor. One breacher's eyes and brain sprayed from his helm vents, while his body remained locked upright against the shield frame. The men behind him pushed the corpse forward. Another blast hit. The dead absorbed part of the pressure. Flesh stripped from the body and spread across the soldiers behind him, but the line advanced. "Keep the walls between you and the song," Varro ordered. "Forward." Black chain grenade launchers fired blindly over the shields. Frag charges burst among the cultists surrounding the lower amplifiers. Las carbines concentrated on weapon mouths, exposed power cables, and the joints of noise marine armor. The response tore whole ranks apart. A sonic wave passed through a layered shield and liquefied everyone behind it. Their bodies collapsed into armor filled with blood, marrow, and shredded organs. The next file climbed across them without slowing. Varro's sappers entered beneath the firing lines. They crawled through the dead with melter harnesses locked around their torsos. One man lost both legs to a blastmaster and continued pulling himself forward by his elbows. Another carried a ruptured intestine looped around his waist so it would not catch beneath his knees. The first sapper reached the central array. A noise marine stepped upon his spine. The prisoner looked up through a face filled with blood. "You sing too much." He closed the trigger. White fire consumed them both. The second and third detonations followed. Melter charges tore through the blastmaster galleries. Amplifier organs burst. Corrupted machinery poured down the walls in burning sheets. Narek Scythe's harmony fractured into feedback, powerful enough to burst the skulls of his own cultists. Varro entered the chamber through the breach. His shot cannon fired into the exposed throat of a fallen noise marine. Scrap metal and bone shards passed through the warrior's skull and erupted from the rear of his amplifier crown. "Kill the instruments," Varro said. "The musicians can wait." The Red Wake moved behind him. Tyberos led it. The Shade Lord entered the lower passages with Kahu and the surviving Red Brethren at his back. Tactical squads cleared the flanking conduits. Black chains followed in the spaces between Carcharodon formations, firing around giants who did not acknowledge their presence. Tormentors met them in the confines of a pressure corridor. The traitor legionaries attempted to form a bolter line. The passage was too narrow. Tyberos reached them before the rear ranks could spread. Hunger closed around the first warrior's weapon and forearm. Chain teeth caught the bolter, tore through its casing, and continued into the gauntlet beneath. Metal, fingers, and ammunition were pulled together into the relic maw. The shells detonated. The tormentor's arm burst at the elbow. Slake crossed his gorget and entered beneath the helm. The chain blades caught the warrior's skull and dragged his head down through the opening in his own armor. Vertebrae cracked. The helm disappeared into the breastplate amid a spray of blood and pulverized bone. Tyberos drove the corpse backwards into the next legionary. Hunger opened the second from hip to shoulder. The barbed blades passed through abdominal plate, organs, both hearts and the lower lung. The halves remained connected by strips of muscle until Tyberos stepped between them. An infractor came over the bodies. His power blade descended. Tyberos caught the wrist, turned it, and drove the weapon through the warrior behind him. Slake bit through the attacker's knee actuator. The infractor dropped. Hunger entered the exposed backpack and tore out the power core with sections of spine still attached. Tyberos discarded both. He did not look at the dead. They mattered only while capable of resistance. The Red Brethren advanced over the remains, storm bolters firing through the gaps around their lord. Mass reactive rounds struck tormentors trapped behind their brothers. Breastplates opened. Bodies burst against the walls. Blood ran through the floor channels until every step drove red liquid from beneath the Terminator's boots. The pressure corridor opened into a turbine hall large enough to contain an imperial cathedral. Generators rotated beneath vaulted gantries. Steam moved through pipes wider than troop transports. Machinery left from the dark age of technology turned without visible power, its blades drawing air down into black depths. A Lord Exultant waited upon the central bridge. 6 flawless blades stood around him. Their armor shone violet and gold amid the industrial gloom. Each carried a different dueling weapon. One held a slender power rapier. Another bore paired sabers with human eyes set into their guards. The Lord Exultant carried a demon blade whose surface moved like exposed muscle. He raised it in salute. "I am Assyrian the Unbound, conqueror of the Crimson Stair, favored of the Dark Prince, breaker of..." Tyberos charged. The first flawless blade died before drawing breath. Hunger caught his rapier and snapped it. Slake closed around his face. Chain teeth tore the helm away with the jaw and most of the skull beneath. Assyrian shouted in outrage. Tyberos drove the headless corpse into him. The champions attempted to surround the Shade Lord, but none would yield position to another. Each sought the killing stroke. Each obstructed his brothers in the belief that proximity to Tyberos belonged to him alone. Tyberos used their pride as terrain. He struck a pressure valve with Hunger. Steam erupted across the bridge. One flawless blade disappeared inside the white cloud. His enhanced senses adjusted quickly, not quickly enough. Tyberos seized him by the throat and hurled him over the rail. The champion struck the turbine housing below, armor folding around his body before rotating machinery drew him into the blades. The hall filled with fragments. Violet ceramite, burning cloth and strips of flesh sprayed from the turbine vents. A severed arm struck Assyrian across the chest. Pieces of intestine wrapped around the bridge supports. Two champions attacked together. Tyberos stepped between their blades. One weapon scored his damaged cuirass. The other entered the abdomen of its owner's brother. Hunger took the first through the armpit. Slake opened the second from groin to sternum. The remaining flawless blades hesitated. Tyberos killed them during the pause. Assyrian attacked last, demon blade screaming with every stroke. He was fast enough to mark Tyberos's armor and skilled enough to avoid the first return strike. He began naming his victories again. Tyberos released the emergency locks beneath the bridge. The gantry tilted towards the turbine. Assyrian drove his blade into the decking to arrest his fall. Tyberos stepped onto the weapon, pinning it, then struck the Lord Exultant across the chest with both relic gauntlets. Assyrian flew backwards into the generator. Rotating blades took him apart. His armor became sparks. His body emerged through the exhaust grill as strips of muscle, shattered bone, and violet metal. Blood rained through the hall. Tyberos continued towards the Nexus. Lord Jailer Krail reached him through an emergency command channel.
The governor appeared upon Tyberos' damaged retinal display, surrounded by officials and armed household troops. "My lord, the remaining transports must be assigned to the Continuity Authority. Senior administratum personnel, command officers and their guards await evacuation." "No." Krail's face tightened. "These men are essential to imperial governance. Carceris has no future governance. Then we must preserve lawful authority elsewhere. The transports carry aspirants, foundry workers, armorers, and black chain survivors, criminals and laborers. Useful assets." Krail raised a seal towards the picked unit. "I invoke the authority of the Senatorum Imperialis and the ancient penal charters of this world." Tyberos looked beyond him, at officers who had spent their lives condemning others to die. "Carceris has received the only judgment that matters." He closed the channel. Deep inside the lattice, Carcharodon tech marines reached the destruction nodes. They installed melter charges along conduits carrying the engine's reality field. Captured plasma reactors were wired into overload cycles. Modified teleport beacons were driven into structural junctions, not to extract matter, but to tear it in conflicting directions during activation. A conventional detonation risked releasing the stored psychic pressure. The tech marines prepared something more severe. The Acheron network would first be forced to maximum enforcement. Every linked mind would be consumed to drive the immaterium away. At the height of that pressure, the charges would collapse the lattice inward. Carceris itself would become the containment vessel. Fulgrim entered Tyberos' armor. "You have killed so beautifully." The voice did not come through the vox. Tyberos cut the external receiver from his gorget with one hooked blade. The component fell, trailing cables. Fulgrim continued inside his skull. "Every sealed hive, every abandoned prisoner, every son expended to purchase another moment. You pretend we oppose one another, yet behold what we have created together." Tyberos walked on. "Come," Fulgrim whispered. "Your silence has earned an audience." The final doors opened. The central nexus extended beyond sight. Mechanisms larger than hive cities rotated around a black geometric void that consumed light without reflecting it. Bridges crossed impossible distances. Billions of neural conduits converged upon the darkness, each pulsing with the final sensations of Carceris. Fulgrim rested upon the central structure, as though seated upon a throne. Impaled prisoners surrounded him. Some remained alive, their exposed nerves wired into the machine. Emperor's children knelt in ranks beneath their primarch, armor slick with blood and violet radiance. Fulgrim rose. With one gesture, he dismissed his sons. They obeyed reluctantly, backing into the shadows. Tyberos entered with the surviving Red Brethren. He looked towards the destruction nodes. "Arm the final charges." Runes changed across the Carcharodon display. Fulgrim smiled. At last. Fulgrim did not attack. Immediate slaughter would have been an admission that the moment required no refinement. He had not drawn Tyberos through a dying world, not tuned billions of nervous systems to the edge of rupture, merely to end the encounter with a single descending blade. The demon Primarch uncoiled from the Acheron structure and descended towards the bridge. Behind him, the Nexus moved in dimensions that refused mortal comprehension. Mechanisms broader than cities rotated around the black geometric void. Human impulses traveled through transparent conduits as threads of pale fire. Each pulse carried fear, pain, fury, or surrender from the population above. Fulgrim wore their suffering like perfume. Tyberos advanced with the surviving Red Brethren spread behind him. The Terminators did not form a ceremonial honor guard. 2 occupied the left firing gallery. 3 moved towards the destruction nodes. Kahu remained close to the Shade Lord, chain fist raised. Others marked teleport points upon the bridge and the surrounding machinery. Fulgrim admired the arrangement. Even here, before a son of the Emperor made immortal by a god, the Carcharodons prepared an execution rather than a duel.
What remains when the hunt ends? Fulgrim asked. Tyberos stopped beyond the reach of the Primarch's coils. Fulgrim spread his upper hands. You take your tithe. You fill your holds with children and slaves. You strip worlds of ammunition, fuel and metal. You return to the outer dark, endure another century, then emerge to repeat the same ritual. The Shade Lord said nothing. What do you desire beyond survival? The question entered the chamber without echo. The Acheron network seemed to absorb it. Not what your chapter requires, Fulgrim continued. Not what duty demands. What does Tyberos want? Hunger and Slake turned at the Carcharodon's sides. Your removal. Fulgrim smiled. A task is not a desire. You threaten the Void Father's domain. Then let us speak of domains. Fulgrim gestured towards the blackness around them. I could give your chapter an empire beyond the sight of terror. Worlds without end. Strong prey bred for your blades. Manufactoria devoted to your fleet. No more scavenging from an imperium that fears you. No more ancient warrants held above your heads by men unworthy to speak your name. The nearest Red Brethren did not move. You would never kneel, Fulgrim said. I would not insult you by asking. Rule the dark. Take everything. Leave nothing except the memory of your coming. We already take what is required. Yes. Fulgrim's smile became intimate. That is why I find you so interesting. He descended another length of the bridge. His serpentine body whispered across the ancient metal. The plain broadsword rested in one hand. A curved weapon shifted like liquid violet glass in another. His whip moved behind him with the slow attention of a living thing. You have no need of imperial virtue, Fulgrim said. No affection for mercy. No belief that weakness deserves preservation. You are closer to liberation than the prisoners above ever were. I am not liberated. No? I have purpose. Fulgrim laughed softly. Purpose is merely a chain that has convinced its bearer to love the weight. It is a weapon. Against the self? Against everything. For a moment, Fulgrim regarded him with genuine interest. You do not pretend to be good. No. You do not claim to save the men you steal. No. You make monsters from children and slaves from survivors. Yes. The answers possessed no shame. Fulgrim felt the disappointment of finding no lie to expose. I free men to become what they truly are, he said. Tyberos's helm inclined by a fraction. They already are. Explain. What a man does is what he is. Your promises are unnecessary. The Primarch's eyes narrowed. Restraint conceals truth. Restraint is also an action. Fulgrim's lower hands tightened around his weapons. You reduce existence to behavior. Existence requires nothing more. No beauty, no aspiration, no transformation. Results. The word fell between them like a blade. Neither spoke of compassion. Neither claimed moral right. Their dispute possessed none of the clean certainty beloved by imperial confessors. One predator offered freedom from every limit. The other regarded limitation as a tool to be sharpened and used. Fulgrim looked towards the conduits containing the chosen prisoners. You believe your red tithe serves you. It does. I permitted it. The Shade Lord remained still. Fulgrim moved one talon through a strand of neural light. The pulse within it brightened, carrying the scream of a distant youth. You selected the strongest. You tested them beneath gunfire, hunger, and betrayal. You taught them to sacrifice the weak. You identified every mind capable of enduring terror without surrender. The demon Primarch extended the glowing strand towards Tyberos. Then you marked them for me. The light broke against hunger's barbs. The broken produce noise, Fulgrim said. Resistance produces harmony. Your apothecaries refined my choir more carefully than any mortal surgeon could have managed. Tyberos's internal display updated. The Red Brethren at the destruction nodes reported final readiness. Melter charges armed, plasma overloads synchronized, teleport beacons awaiting the command to turn extraction into rupture. Fulgrim saw none of the runes. He saw the minute change in Tyberos's posture. "Does it wound you?" the Primarch asked. "To know your harvest has become mine?" "No." Fulgrim attacked. The whip moved first. It passed around Tyberos and struck the Red Brethren behind him. Barbed coils wrapped one Terminator at the waist and tore him from the bridge. The warrior struck an Acheron conduit hard enough to crack his breastplate. Fulgrim's plain blade descended at the same instant. Tyberos raised hunger. The impact drove the relic gauntlet against his own shoulder. Armor split at the elbow. Slake crossed towards Fulgrim's lower wrist, but the curved demon blade altered length during the stroke and entered beneath the Carcharodon's guard. Tyberos turned. The edge scraped across his cuirass rather than entering the secondary heart. Fulgrim's taloned hand struck from above. Claws opened a Red Brother's pauldron and tore through the armor beneath. The Terminator fired his storm bolter into the Primarch's abdomen. Shells detonated within violet flesh and revealed burning light instead of organs. Fulgrim's tail swept the bridge. 2 Carcharodons were thrown into the rotating machinery beyond. One vanished between black geometric plates. The other struck a support arch and fell with his spine broken inside his armor. Tyberos perceived every attack. His transhuman senses registered changes in Fulgrim's shoulders, wings, wrists, and coils. Targeting runes predicted the paths of blades and whip. His body could not answer all of them. No Astartes body could. "Fire," Tyberos said. The Red Brethren obeyed. Storm bolters struck Fulgrim from both galleries. Cyclone missiles crossed above Tyberos's head. A heavy flamer washed the Primarch's wings in burning promethium. Tyberos moved within the barrage. He did not seek victory through strength. He sought limitation. The bridge supports had already been cut. Teleport markers defined narrow regions between the engine's moving parts. Red Brethren firing lines forced Fulgrim to turn his armored flanks towards Tyberos, or accept continuous mass-reactive impacts against his face and weapon hands. The Demon Primarch answered by changing the battlefield. One wingbeat hurled the flames aside. His whip caught a firing gallery and tore it from the Nexus wall. Terminators fell with the platform, still firing as they descended into the black void. Fulgrim crossed the distance between heartbeats. His broadsword pierced Tyberos's breastplate. The blade entered beneath the collar and emerged beside the power unit at his back. Internal warnings became a field of crimson. The weapon missed his primary heart by the breadth of a finger. Tyberos trapped the blade between Hunger's barbs. Slake severed a demonic attendant that had formed beside Fulgrim. Chain teeth dragged the creature's head into its torso. Its body collapsed into perfumed vapor. Fulgrim struck Tyberos with the pommel of the curved blade. The Shade Lord's left shoulder guard tore free. It spun across the bridge, trailing cables, blood and fragments of fused skin. A second blow struck his knee. The actuator broke. Tyberos dropped, caught himself with one gauntlet, and rolled beneath the sweep of Fulgrim's tail. The coils passed close enough to tear plating from his back. He rose on the damaged leg. Fulgrim's talons entered the side of his armor and pulled. The cuirass opened along the ribs. Broken ceramite peeled away. Blood flooded across Tyberos's pale skin. One rib end showed white inside the wound. The Shade Lord's helm had split from temple to jaw. Fulgrim seized the damaged faceplate and tore it away. Tyberos looked back at him with corpse-pale features, black eyes and blood running from one nostril. Fulgrim searched his face. No terror, no awe, no fury at the deaths of his sons, only concentration. The Carcharodon was calculating the distance between Fulgrim's lower left wrist and Slake. He was measuring the angle of the rotating control spine. He was estimating which life upon the bridge would purchase the next opening. "How dreary," Fulgrim whispered. He drove the curved blade through Tyberos's exposed shoulder. The weapon passed between armor plates, entered flesh, and emerged into the Acheron structure behind him. The Shade Lord was pinned upright against the machine. Fulgrim leaned close. At least hate me. Tyberos released hunger from the broadsword. His free gauntlet closed upon Fulgrim's lower wrist. Slake's barbs entered demonic armor. The chainmaw activated, teeth ground through violet plate and the impossible flesh beneath. Fulgrim pulled back, but Tyberos used the blade through his shoulder as an anchor. The mechanism dug deeper. Bones screamed. Luminous blood erupted across them both. Fulgrim struck Tyberos in the face with another hand. The blow fractured his cheek and drove the curved blade farther through his shoulder. Slake continued cutting. The wrists separated. Fulgrim's hand fell to the bridge, still holding its weapon. Fingers opened and closed around empty air, while violet blood spread across the black metal. The demon Primarch stared at the stump. New flesh was already forming. Threads of light wove themselves into bone, tendon, and claw. Yet something shifted within his expression. Not pain, offense. Tyberos tore himself from the blade, leaving part of his shoulder upon it. He struck for Fulgrim's throat. The Primarch caught hunger with his returning broadsword. Then he turned towards the Red Brethren. The first died beneath his whip. Fulgrim dragged the Terminator across the bridge and threw him towards Tyberos. The Shadelord stepped aside. The broken warrior struck the floor, armor crushed inward around ruptured organs. He remained alive. Fulgrim placed one coil upon his back and pressed until the breastplate split against the bridge. Blood and fragments of lung forced through the gorget. The next Red Brother charged with chain fist raised. Fulgrim caught him in both upper hands. He peeled the Terminator from his armor. Ceramite plates opened. Black carapace connections tore from flesh. Cables came free, carrying strips of muscle. The Carcharodon's ribcage broke as Fulgrim pulled him out through the front of his own cuirass. The warrior struck the bridge skinless from shoulder to waist. Fulgrim held up the empty armor and dropped it beside him. A third fired until his storm bolter clicked empty. Fulgrim reached him before he could engage the chain fist. The demon blade entered beneath the Terminator's arms. Fulgrim opened the back plate with careful cuts. He exposed the progenoid glands without killing the warrior, then removed them between two talons. The Red Brother's scream became wet static. Fulgrim held the glands before Tyberos. "Centuries of service," he said. "A legacy preserved through war after war." He crushed them. Pulp ran between his fingers. Tyberos advanced. Fulgrim threw the dying Carcharodon into his path. The Shadelord stepped over him. That pleased the Primarch less than grief would have. One by one, the Red Brethren died. Fulgrim made each death visible. He broke armor slowly. He opened ancient warriors and displayed the mortal remnants beneath their transhuman flesh. He wanted Tyberos to see memory, loyalty, and gene lineage reduced to meat. Kahu remained at the final destruction node. His chain fist rested upon the activation housing. "Awaiting command," he said. Fulgrim heard him. The demon Primarch spread his regenerated hand. New claws gleamed wetly. "Here is your choice," he told Tyberos. "Continue. Perhaps you may wound me again. Perhaps you may avenge one of these faithful corpses before I take your head." The black void rotated behind him. "Or destroy the engine. Abandon your dead. Abandon those still living. Reduce all of Carceris to ash and call the failure duty." Fulgrim's voice softened. "Show me which chain holds you most tightly. Pride, brotherhood, vengeance, obligation." Tyberos looked towards Kahu. The surviving Terminator waited. Fulgrim smiled. This was the moment. Not the severed hand. Not the battle. Not the millions dying above. The choice would reveal the secret within the Predator. "Activate," Tyberos said. Kahu struck the housing. The demolition sequence began. Fulgrim's smile disappeared. No hesitation. No farewell to the dying. No final attempt at vengeance. Tyberos denied him the emotional truth he had constructed the entire war to expose. The refusal wounded more deeply than Slake. Fulgrim crossed the bridge in a blur of blades. Tyberos met him. Then the Acheron engine enforced reality. Color vanished. Not darkness. Absence. Violet flame became grey, then ceased to possess light. Demonic attendants flattened into black shadows upon the machinery. Their shapes writhed for an instant before disappearing. Fulgrim's curved blade lost substance. Its edge became smoke. Its screaming soul stretched into a thin line and snapped. The whip dissolved from the barbs inward. Across the nexus, warp-grown flesh receded from ancient metal. Emperor's children fell as mutations collapsed inside their armor. Horns became brittle bone. Additional limbs withered and tore free. Possessed warriors vomited light before dropping empty. Fulgrim flickered. His flesh became translucent. Tyberos saw impossible anatomy burning within him. Too many hearts, coils filled with faces, wings rooted in screaming souls, a furnace of violet radiance where any mortal creature would have possessed organs. The black geometry at the center of the nexus expanded. Every conduit discharged at once. Billions of minds screamed through the machine. Fulgrim threw back his head. His cry shook the Acheron structure. It was not fear. It was rage at losing authorship of the ending. The bridge folded towards the void. Mechanisms larger than hive towers tore from their paths. Conduits burst, releasing storms of neural fire. Ancient metal collapsed into angles that devoured their own dimensions. Tyberos anchored hunger into the bridge. Fulgrim reached for him with 3 blades and a newly formed hand. Between them, the world began to fall inward. The Acheron engine struck Carceris like a commandment. Reality tightened. Across the prison world, warp rifts contracted with the violence of jaws closing. Demonettes caught between the Immaterium and the burning Manufactoria were crushed along the line of manifestation. Their torsos remained in the material universe, while their lower bodies vanished into collapsing violet light. For a heartbeat, the severed halves clawed across iron floors, spilling perfumed ichor and ropes of impossible organs. Then the field rejected what remained and flattened them into twitching shadows. Seekers running along the vertical walls of Hive Tertius became subject to gravity. Their limbs snapped beneath bodies never designed to carry physical weight. Riders struck the ferrocrete kilometers below, exploding into sprays of glassy bone and violet meat. Fiends folded inward as incompatible anatomies asserted themselves at once. Spines twisted through rib cages. Jaws opened inside organs. Limbs multiplied, fused and tore free until the creatures became convulsing heaps of claws and exposed nerves. Warp portals closed around everything passing through them. An Emperor's Children Terminator formation, translating into Gallows 9, arrived only partially. 3 warriors materialized without legs. Another appeared embedded waist-deep in the floor, his armor and flesh fused with the ferrocrete. The final legionary emerged as 2 separate vertical halves that fired upon one another before collapsing. Possessed prisoners regained themselves. Men who had spent hours watching through their own eyes as demons used their bodies for murder suddenly felt control return. They looked down upon limbs transformed into claws, torsos split by mouths and faces stretched across armor of living skin. Some prayed, some screamed, most died before completing either. Mutated bones reasserted human proportion and shattered inside them. Additional hearts collapsed into tumors. Warp-grown muscle rotted in seconds, turning to black fluid beneath their skin. One prisoner tore open his own abdomen and dragged out a serpentine organ that still whispered Fulgrim's name after he crushed it beneath his boot. Psychers suffered first and longest. Sanctioned astropaths convulsed upon their thrones. Blood poured from eyes, ears, mouths, and the sockets where augmetics entered their skulls. Psychic hoods overheated. Copper wiring melted into brain tissue. Men hammered their heads against walls to escape the silence descending upon the warp, breaking facial bones until grey matter leaked through their nostrils. The Immaterium was not merely distant, it was being driven away. Takahurangi felt the wave rise through Carceris. He stood inside the command hold of a Thunderhawk, grounded upon the extraction fields of Manufactorum 9. His hands gripped the edges of the tactical altar. Blood ran from beneath his psychic hood and gathered in the corners of his mouth. For an instant, his soul felt trapped inside his flesh. No currents of the warp surrounded him, no distant pressure of mines, no ancestral echoes. The world became brutally material, every sensation confined to nerve, bone, and blood. Then the field passed through him. Takaharangi fell to one knee. The Thunderhawk's mortal crew kept working. None dared approach him. "Extraction pattern remains unchanged," he said. His voice emerged as a rasp. Pict screens showed the surface disintegrating beneath storms of ash and warp fire. Runways had become rivers of burning promethium. Orbital debris descended through the clouds in incandescent trails. Sonic bombardment and ancient reality pressure interfered with every guidance system. The extraction craft rose anyway. Thunderhawks lifted from prison roofs, with engines howling. Storm ravens climbed between falling manufactorum towers. Assault boats fired retros, while black chain troopers clung to hull ladders and open loading ramps. Industrial lifters ascended slowly beneath loads of machinery, heavy enough to tear them apart. The priorities did not change. Aspirants first. Gene stock and apothecarian assets. Armorers, foundry savants, void technicians and reactor specialists. Black chain veterans judged useful for continued warfare. Macro munitions, void seals, adamantium billets, machine tools, and irreplaceable components. Everything else remained expendable. A transport carrying wounded administratum officials broke through the security cordon and attempted to join the protected ascent corridor. Takaharangi watched its identification rune move across the display. "Divert escort," the pilot requested. "No. They claim priority authority. Remove them from the corridor." The Thunderhawk gunship nearest the civilian transport turned. Its Lascannons fired once. The transport's port engine vanished. The vessel rolled, struck the side of an orbital lifter, and broke apart. Burning officials fell through the clouds among parchment, luggage, and household servants. Some continued transmitting appeals, while the atmosphere tore them from their seats. A second craft carried Medici personnel and senior penal officers. Its manifest also listed a team of reactor artificers. Takaharangi marked the artificers for retrieval. The rest were not considered. Below the flight lines, wounded civilians crowded against the barricades. Prisoners held dead children above their heads, believing the sight might earn passage. Overseers thrust seals towards Carcharodon's serfs. Guardsmen opened fire when the crowds pressed too close. The Carcharodons loaded machine tools, while men died against the landing gear. Takaharangi looked towards the tactical representation of the world beneath them. Tyberos remained inside the Nexus. The Shade Lord's life signs flickered at the edge of detection. One heart functioned, one did not. The connection vanished beneath another surge of Acheron enforcement. In the depths, Fulgrim was still stronger. The reality field stripped away the excess of his manifestation, but what remained possessed the might of a Primarch, shaped by the warp and swollen by the favor of a god. His regenerated hand flickered between flesh, light, and exposed bone. 3 blades lost and regained substance with every movement. His wings burned at the edges, each feather becoming ash before growing again. Tyberos fought upon one functioning leg. Fulgrim broke the other knee actuator with the flat of his broadsword. The impact folded the Shade Lord's leg beneath him. Terminator plates split around the joint. Metal fragments entered flesh. Tyberos fell, drove hunger into the bridge, and arrested the descent before the black geometry could take him. Fulgrim struck again. Tyberos swung from the embedded claw, allowing the blade to pass over his head. Slake closed around the Primarch's lower arm. The chain teeth failed to sever it, but they held long enough for the Shade Lord to draw himself upright. Fulgrim laughed. "You reduce everything to function." He tore his arm free. Luminous flesh remained caught in Slake's teeth, burning like captured starlight. Tyberos locked his damaged boots to the bridge. Magnetic clamps engaged beneath the ruined armor. He could no longer advance. He made the ground come to him. Hunger caught one of the black control struts rotating past the bridge. Tyberos pulled. The ancient mechanism changed course by a fraction and struck Fulgrim across the coils. The Primarch was thrown sideways. Tyberos fired his damaged teleport marker. It did not extract him. The modified signal caused a section of the bridge to translate several meters into the adjoining structure. Black metal fused with black metal. The platform buckled around Fulgrim's tail, pinning a length of the serpentine body beneath overlapping geometry. Tyberos attacked. Hunger's barbs tore through scales made brittle by the reality field. Slake ground into exposed tissue. Fulgrim's blood sprayed across the colorless chamber and became violet only after leaving the zone closest to the black void. The Primarch answered with all remaining hands. A talon entered Tyberos's opened cuirass. Fulgrim tore downward. Terminator plate peeled apart. Rib fragments snapped free and struck the inside of the armor. One punctured the Shade Lord's remaining lung. Another broke beneath Fulgrim's fingers and disappeared into the meat of his chest. The plain sword struck Tyberos across the abdomen. The armor held. The organs beneath did not. Fulgrim's tail ripped free from the trapped platform. The motion shattered the bridge around them and wrapped coils around Tyberos before he could reset his footing. The Shade Lord disappeared inside violet scales. Fulgrim tightened. Ceramite cracked. Internal braces folded into flesh. Tyberos's ruined ribs compressed against both hearts. One heart burst. Pain white enough to blind a mortal passed through his nervous system. Blood filled his chest cavity. The secondary organs ceased beating in a wet, muscular convulsion. Fulgrim drew him close. The Primarch's face had become unstable. Perfection shifted between beauty, exposed skull, and violet flame. One eye remained luminous and flawless. The other opened into a depth filled with screaming faces. "Look at me," Fulgrim said. Tyberos did. "Fear me." The coils tightened again. Warning runes vanished as the armor systems failed. "Hate me." Tyberos's blood ran across Fulgrim's scales. "Acknowledge what stands before you." Hunger remained locked around a section of the bridge. Slake was pinned between Tyberos's breastplate and the Primarch's body. Fulgrim leaned closer. "Give this moment meaning." Tyberos transmitted the destruction code. His armor no longer possessed a functioning Vox array. The order passed through reserve systems buried in the black carapace, through severed cables, and the modified teleport Homer fused into the rear of his cuirass. The signal reached the tech marines. Melter charges armed. Captured plasma reactors entered terminal overload. The Acheron network received the final enforcement command. Fulgrim's expression changed. Tyberos spoke through blood. Denied. The engine consumed Carceris. Every collar heated at once. Iron rings melted into skin, muscle, and vertebrae. Prisoners clawed at their throats as molten metal entered spinal canals. Some tore the devices free with strips of flesh still attached. Others fell before their hands reached the locks. Punishment implants discharged through brains. Entire prison blocks died standing. Men froze while firing. Fingers fused around laser-gun triggers as nervous systems became ash. Worshippers remained on their knees while blood steamed inside their skulls. Murderers strangling rivals stiffened together and collapsed as paired corpses. Hundreds of millions died without falling immediately. The Acheron network held their bodies upright through the final neural command, extracting every last impulse of fear, resistance, and sensation before allowing muscles to fail. Hive districts became silent in waves. One moment they contained gunfire, screaming, engines, and prayer. The next held only the sound of fires. Their deaths passed into the reality field. Material law hardened around Fulgrim. His regenerated hand became translucent. Bones appeared inside it, then nerves, then threads of violet fire bound around the memories of dead warriors. The hand severed earlier by Slake fell from the wrist a second time without being touched. It struck the bridge and dissolved into shrieking vapor. Fulgrim released Tyberos, not by choice. His coils were becoming glass. Scales hardened, cracked and shattered. Fragments spun into the black void, each carrying a distorted reflection of the Primarch's face. His wings spread as the field tore through them. Feathers ignited from the roots outward. One wing separated into burning sections. The other collapsed into a skeletal frame of light. Fulgrim drove the broadsword into the bridge. The weapon remained real. His arm did not. The limb flickered, vanishing to the shoulder, before returning as naked muscle and golden bone. The Immaterium reached for him from beyond Carceris. Acheron cut the connection. For the first time since his ascension, Fulgrim's manifested form stood isolated from the ocean that sustained it. He screamed. The sound ruptured conduits throughout the Nexus. It was not the cry of a creature fearing death. It was rage against limitation, fury at being reduced to a body that could no longer choose its own laws, hatred for the silent warrior who had denied him fear, worship, and control of the final act. The black geometry expanded around him. Tyberos remained anchored to the bridge, armor crushed, one heart silent and the other beating without rhythm. Fulgrim reached towards him. Claws passed through the Shade Lord's shoulder guard and emerged as smoke. "This is not victory," the Primarch said. Tyberos gave no answer. Fulgrim's lower body fractured into spirals of glass. "You have not slain me." More of him vanished. The surviving eye fixed upon Tyberos. "When we meet again, little predator, I will make the moment last." The black geometry closed. Fulgrim's manifested body was dragged inward. The remaining wing became fire. His face stretched across several impossible angles. For an instant, Tyberos saw the demon Primarch as a silhouette filled with an entire screaming realm. Then, Fulgrim was gone. The Nexus began collapsing. Kahu's teleport Homer transmitted once from beneath a field of broken machinery. No life signs accompanied it. The last Red Brethren had completed his duty. Tyberos attempted to release Hunger. From the bridge, the gauntlet did not respond. The central lattice folded inward around him. Conduits burst, filling the chamber with the final neural light of billions. Platforms became lines. Lines became points. The black void consumed its own edges. A lock reached the Nikkor. The Teleportarium Master received no coherent biological pattern. He received a mass of damaged Terminator armor, failing organs and foreign warp residue surrounded by catastrophic interference. "Translate," Tekahurangi ordered through the fleet command net. "The pattern may not survive." "Translate." The Nikkor fired its teleportarium into the dying world. Tyberos vanished seconds before the bridge ceased to exist. He appeared upon the receiving dais, fused to his ruined armor. The impact broke the stone beneath him. Apothecaries advanced at once. Medicae servitors cut into the cuirass. Blood poured through every opened seam. One heart had stopped. The remaining organ registered a pulse too weak and irregular for certainty. "Is he conscious?" an artificer asked. The senior apothecary looked towards the exposed portion of Tyberos's face. The black eyes remained open. He could not determine whether they saw anything. Hunger and Slake were locked shut. Demonic flesh burned between their teeth and barbs. The fragments writhed against the relic weapons until the teleportarium wards ignited. Then they vanished. Tekahurangi reached the chamber as the apothecaries carried Tyberos towards the surgical vaults. "Life state?" he asked. "Undetermined." The deck shook. The first plasma torpedoes struck Carceris. The scouring began. Carcharodon warships fired upon every remaining network site. Lance beams cut through continental foundries. Macro batteries erased prison hives whose foundations contained Acheron conduits. Reactor complexes received remote overload commands. Orbital stations were forced from stable trajectories and driven into the atmosphere. No distinction remained between Imperial and enemy territory. A black chain fortress still resisting the Emperor's children vanished beneath lance fire because a collar control relay remained active below it. A manufactorum containing millions of loyal laborers was destroyed because its cogitators had once communicated with the engine. Neutral signals received no answer. Distress calls went unheard. Carceris died beneath the weight of its own industry. Manufactoria erupted. Tectonic wounds opened across the iron continents. Seas of burning chemical waste poured into prison canyons, carrying tanks, bodies, and entire HAB districts in incandescent floods. Atmosphere processors failed. Metal ash filled the sky. Survivors suffocated in sealed cells, burned upon open roads, or vanished beneath collapsing mountains of machinery. Billions already slain by Acheron were cremated where they stood. Their fused collars glowed within the fires like rings of molten gold. The fleet departed as the crust began to break. Its holds carried aspirants, condemned soldiers, enslaved workers, machinery, ammunition, and industrial stores. The red tithe had been taken. The fleet had been fed. Fulgrim's weapon had been denied. Carceris had ceased to be an imperial world. As the Nicor turned towards the outer dark, every Vox system aboard the vessel activated. Fulgrim's laughter passed through bridge speakers, medici servitors, armor systems, and the mouths of dead astropaths. It lasted for one breath. Then silence returned. Tyberos awoke beneath knives. He knew them by pressure before sight returned. Monomolecular blades moved through dead tissue around his ribs. Saw teeth worried at fused ceramite. Injector needles entered the exposed sockets of his black carapace, feeding diagnostic impulses into nerves that answered with lightning. The sealed apothecarian of the Nicor smelled of cauterized flesh, sacred oils, and chemical frost. Surgical lumens burned above him in white circles. His armor lay across several iron tables, no longer a suit, but a field of broken relics. Sections of the cuirass had been cut free with strips of skin still bonded to their inner plates. One pauldron rested inside a preservation cradle because pieces of shoulder muscle remained attached to its ancient seals. Tyberos attempted to rise. Restraint pistons locked around his wrists, waist, and surviving knee. The senior apothecary stood over him. Remain. Tyberos's throat had been reconstructed. His first breath passed through dried blood and tasted of metal. Report. The apothecary adjusted a suspensor frame supporting the left side of Tyberos's chest. Your primary heart functions under mechanical assistance. The secondary organ has been repaired, though its rhythm remains unstable. Your left lung has been reconstructed from cultured tissue and sections of the right. 4 ribs have been replaced. 3 vertebrae require augmetic reinforcement before you return to full plate. Casualties. Pain suppression first. Casualties. The apothecary's helm lenses remained fixed upon him. 47 battle brothers confirmed dead. 9 remain in suspension. 6 may not return to combat service. Tyberos waited. The apothecary understood the unspoken question. The Red Brethren have suffered terminal depletion. Kahu is dead. Most of the formation was lost within the Acheron Nexus and the Freight Cathedral. 3 Terminators remain combat capable. 2 suits have been recovered without viable occupants. The words entered the silence of the chamber. Tyberos did not close his eyes. He did not ask how the warriors died. He had seen enough of them die to know the answer. Gene seed. Less than half recovered. Only then did Tyberos permit the apothecary to activate the pain suppressants. Cold spread through his bloodstream. The torn edges of his body receded from agony into pressure. The restraint pistons released. Tyberos sat upright, while medici servitors continued fastening augmetic braces around his spine. Hunger and Slake waited within a warded reliquary at the end of the chamber. The relic gauntlets had been scrubbed of demonic residue. Their barbs remained stained violet, where no solvent could cleanse them. Slake's chainmaw had lost several teeth. Hunger's outer blade had been bent near the root. Tyberos looked at them. They had survived. That was sufficient. The red tithe was counted 3 decks below the apothecarian. The chosen youths stood naked beneath gene lumens, while apothecaries and chapter serfs moved among them. Each carried the pale assessment mark placed upon him during the trials of Carceris. Some had lost fingers, eyes, or sections of flesh during the invasion. Others bore burns from sonic weapons and collar discharges. Injury did not disqualify them. Weakness did. Blood was taken. Bone density was measured. Organs were scanned for corruption. Candidates who failed one test were removed without explanation. Some were sent to labor holds. Others were taken through doors from which no one returned. The first aspirant trial began before the youths received food. They were sealed inside a compartment whose gravity increased with every passing minute. No instructions were given. Those who remained standing longest were marked. Those who helped weaker candidates were observed. Those who broke another boy's legs to improve their own position were observed more closely. The Carcharodons required strength. They also required the will to use it without hesitation. The adults were divided according to utility. Void-trained prisoners entered the ship clans, where bonded crews taught them the handling of ammunition hoists, pressure gates, and plasma conduits. Foundry workers were marched towards the forge decks. Armorers and machine adepts received numerical brands and were attached to tech marine retinues. Men with combat experience entered auxiliary musters. The remainder became serfs. Their heads were shaved. Their names were entered into the Nicor's memory vaults. Iron ownership marks were burned over the symbols of Carceris. The old chains remained around many wrists and ankles until ship serfs replaced them with restraints suited to void labor. The black chain survivors kept their collars. Carcharodon armorers removed the prison world's command runes and engraved hooked teeth over them. The explosive charges remained functional. New control systems linked them to the Nicor's discipline network. Men who had escaped a planet-sized prison discovered that their new prison possessed engines. It crossed the stars. Marshal convict Varro stood before the survivors inside an embarkation hold. Fewer than 1 man in 5 had reached the fleet. Some wore bandages over opened skulls. Others leaned upon lascarbines because their legs had been burned or shattered. None complained. Complaint required the belief that someone cared. Tyberos entered without restored armor. A black body glove covered his reconstructed flesh. Augmetic braces ran along his spine and left leg. His size remained monstrous, even without Terminator plate. The prisoners lowered their voices. Varro did not kneel. The Shade Lord regarded him. "Your cohorts remain effective. Those still breathing," Varro said. "They require command. You have commanders. Not for them." Varro glanced towards the men behind him. "What work? Boarding actions, fortress breaches, surf suppression, contaminated zones, operations where Astartes' expenditure is inefficient." Varro gave a dry laugh. "The same work as before, with different targets, and the same collars." "Yes." The martial convict studied Tyberos's pale face. "How many victories purchase freedom?" "None." The answer came without ornament. Varro nodded slowly. No lie. No promise of pardon written by officials who would die before honoring it. No claims that service purified guilt or earned the Emperor's mercy. Only function. "Then we understand one another," Varro said. "You will command the Black Chain Auxiliaries. Until I die? Until you fail." Varro turned towards his soldiers. "Better terms than Carceris." No one laughed. The industrial tally required 3 ship cycles to complete. Carceris had yielded reactor housings, replacement plasma regulators, void ship armor, and macro munitions by the 1,000. Promethium tanks filled entire cargo vaults. Ceramite precursors lay stacked beside adamantium billets, and ancient machine tools stripped from manufactoria before the scouring began. The forge ship Pale Warden began consuming the captured wealth immediately. Its foundries never cooled. Servitors fed broken armor plate into crucibles, While tech marines supervised the remaking of components no Imperial dockyard had manufactured for millennia. Damaged escort vessels entered its docking arms and emerged with patched hulls, restored weapon mounts, and replacement drive vanes. Some of the materials were contaminated by blood. No one cleaned them before smelting. Carceris would continue serving the fleet after its death. Its metal would become armor. Its ammunition would kill on distant worlds. Its prisoners would labor until their bones were rendered into nutrient compounds or devotional relics. The Carcharodons had achieved their second objective. The cost was entered into sealed ledgers and spoken of nowhere else. Takahurangi brought the judgment upon the third objective to the Strategium. Tyberos stood before the hololithic ruin of Carceris, wearing a temporary command harness in place of full armor. The planet rotated as a broken sphere. Entire regions of crust had collapsed inward. Fire surrounded the world in a dying atmosphere. Auspec's records showed the Acheron nexus folding into the mantle before the tectonic fracture. No intact control structure survived, Tekahurangi said. The primary lattice ceased transmitting before the final bombardment. Peripheral nodes burned with the hives. The engine is destroyed. The machine is destroyed. Tyberos looked towards him. The black veins around the librarian's eyes had faded, but not vanished. Takahurangi continued. Its logic may remain. Where? Penal registries, collar command structures, census architecture. Carceris copied the Acheron network for generations without understanding what it copied. Every archive taken from the world may contain fragments of the pattern. Useful records? Aspirant assessments, gene screening results, labor classifications, technical histories. Extract them. And the rest? Destroy every original archive. The order passed to the tech marines. Data vaults were isolated from the fleet noosphere. Servitors copied personnel lists onto newly sanctified cores. Once the useful information was removed, the original Carceran systems were placed inside plasma furnaces. No archive was preserved for study. No savant was permitted to argue. Knowledge had value only while it remained controlled. Lord Jailer Othmar Krail was discovered during the archive purge. He had bribed a transport officer with access codes and concealed himself among the industrial savants evacuated from Hive. Tertius. His uniform had been replaced by a foundry robe. Chemical burns had been painted across his hands to imitate a lifetime of labor. The deception failed when a gene scribe compared his identification seal against the useful personnel lists. Krail was brought before Tyberos in chains. The former ruler of Carceris had lost weight since boarding the fleet. His scalp had been shaved. Without medallions, banners, and household guards, he resembled an aging clerk. "My lord," he said, "I acted to preserve imperial continuity." Tyberos remained silent. The lawful governor of a destroyed world retains authority over its surviving population. I can organize the labor drafts, adjudicate disputes, and ensure compliance with the penal codes. What can you do? Krail blinked. I have explained. Useful work. I governed 13 billion souls. You issued orders. I administered an imperial world. What can you build? Krail's mouth opened. Tyberos waited. What can you repair? The Lord Jailer looked towards the Carcharodon serf standing beside him. I possess knowledge of statecraft, law, and sector governance. What weapon can you fire? Krail said nothing. What machine can you maintain? Silence. What fortress can you breach? The former governor's face paled. I am the lawful continuity of Carceris. Carceris is dead. Tyberos looked towards the serfs. Place him in the adult combat trials. No rank, no armor, no protection. Krail began invoking imperial charters as they dragged him away. His voice disappeared behind the closing doors. Within the warp, Fulgrim returned to perfection. He manifested aboard the Phoenician's Grace, upon a throne of ivory, silk, and living nerve. The damage inflicted by Acheron had vanished. 4 arms rested around him, his wings spread immaculate behind his shoulders. Violet scales reflected the chamber's light without scar or crack. His severed hand had returned. He flexed the fingers. The commanders of the surviving warbands knelt below. Some blamed Narek's scythe for losing control of the choir. Others accused rival lords exultant of sabotaging the descent. Several spoke only praise, calling Carceris a triumph of suffering and naming Fulgrim's battle with Tyberos a masterpiece beyond mortal comprehension. Fulgrim listened until repetition became unbearable. He killed the accusers first. His whip passed through their kneeling ranks and opened armor, spines and throats. Bodies collapsed across one another. One commander attempted to rise and found his legs lying several meters behind him. Fulgrim killed the flatterers next. Their praise had become indistinguishable from fear. He removed their tongues, then their heads, allowing each body enough time to recognize the order of its destruction. Only the mutilated champion from Manufactorum 9 remained. The warrior still lacked a jaw. He knelt with blood leaking from the opening beneath his helm. Fulgrim descended towards him. "You laughed at the predator's retreat," he said. "Now you understand that withdrawal can possess purpose." The champion lowered his head. Fulgrim placed one hand upon his breastplate. Understanding deserves expression. The armor softened beneath his touch. Ceramite became flesh. Flesh opened into lips. Rows of teeth grew across the champion's chest, followed by a tongue too large for the new mouth. The warrior inhaled. The chest mouth screamed. It would scream with every breath thereafter. Fulgrim smiled and turned away. Carceris was not a defeat. The Imperium had lost an industrial world. Billions were dead. The Carcharodons had suffered wounds that would require centuries to mend. Tales of Tyberos drawing blood from a demon Primarch would spread through the warbands and draw ambitious champions towards Fulgrim's campaign. Yet beneath the amusement lay fury. Tyberos had denied him the engine, denied him the perfect conclusion, denied him fear, hatred, and worship. The Carcharodons would require attention. Not now, eventually. Fulgrim imagined the outer dark filled with violet light and silent warriors learning to scream. The thought pleased him. Aboard the Nikor, Tekahurangi heard the harmonic. It came from a lower surf deck, assigned to newly acquired foundry workers. The sound was almost beneath detection, a pure note traveling through bulkheads and restraint collars. The librarian listened once. He recognized the frequency. Acheron. Tyberos received the report inside the observation vault. Source: Deck Theta 9, 4,311 workers. No confirmed corruption. Seal it. We could isolate individuals and investigate. Seal it. The blast doors closed. Workers realized something was wrong when ventilation ceased. They crowded the hatches, shouting through internal Vox units. Some struck the doors with tools. Others begged to identify the infected. Tyberos ordered the deck vented. The outer gates opened. Air became a storm. Men were dragged from corridors and work cells. Bodies struck bulkheads, rails, and one another before disappearing into the void. Fingers clung to door seams until pressure tore them away. Blood froze into glittering clouds around the hull. The harmonic stopped. No investigation followed. The Nikor continued towards the outer dark. Tyberos stood before the observation glass, with Tekahurangi beside him. Stars stretched across the blackness. Somewhere beyond them waited enemies that had never heard the Imperium's name. Carceris had given the fleet recruits, slaves, weapons, and scars. It had also shown them that Fulgrim now hunted far from the ancient roots of war. Tekahurangi watched the darkness. Will the Phoenician return? Tyberos's reflection stared back from the glass, corpse pale and unfinished. Everything returns when it believes it was not killed. Behind them, the emptied surf deck drifted in perfect silence.